Yo, what's going on?
Yo!
Our wonderful Omis out there in the multiverse or the metaverse or wherever you're listening to this or viewing this tonight.
If somebody's listening from the metaverse, that would be pretty epic. I
That
gotta
would
say.
be. YouTube is on the metaverse, I'm pretty sure. So, I mean, it's possible, bro. You know what?
Hell yeah.
I think I'm going to go listen to an episode of metaverse just to kick that one off. But
Yeah, listen
anyway.
to an episode on the metaverse. That'd be epic.
Hell yeah, bro. Bucket list.
Yeah.
So tonight we have an amazing guest. We have our good friend, Tom, the Bat Force. I would like to say that Tom is probably the world's foremost expert on anything comic book related.
Oh my god.
Particularly including the esoteric within comic books, which if you think way back, Nick, you remember episode 14, we did esoteric comic books.
Oh yeah,
And,
I remember it well.
I'm
That
going to
was a
confess
good one.
something before you now, bro. That was one of the very first complaints we ever got was that we mistakenly said DC Comics didn't have that much magic.
Oh.
So-
Oh no! They hated on. Yeah. I mean, look, there's a lot of comics out there, and it's hard to get all of it. But hey, you know what? I love it. Y'all show us when we're wrong. I'm cool with that. I always like to learn.
I don't remember you guys saying that. I just thought it was more of a Marvel centric episode, which I didn't mind at all because I'm a big DC guy myself. So it was nice to hear about the Marvel stuff.
Yeah,
So
hell yeah.
I would love to hear. I mean, obviously we've talked about this stuff, whether it's on Instagram or in the DMs or on the phone or what have you. But just for the listener's sake, I would like you to, if you're comfortable, go into like your background into comics, what you do with your podcast, and
Yeah, we
kind of
should say, by the way, Bat Force Radio and the whole Bat Force aggregate, whatever you want to call it, is like the coolest. Like Bat Force, if you're on Instagram, on YouTube, on the podcast, like they have it on SoundCloud, they have it on most podcasting platforms. It is amazing. Like I definitely feel comfortable saying you're one of the forefront speakers on the subject of Batman, no doubt.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
you've got that shit down pat. So if any of our listeners are into comics, DC, Batman, whatever, you got to check this guy out. He's amazing. But sorry, I
Absolutely.
just had to preface it with that.
top
Thank you,
notch,
guys.
man. And your memes are hilarious. Your
yeah.
your memes are fire. The funniest
Yeah.
memes that we've probably ever shared publicly from like Patreon or whatever have almost always been from you. And I gotta say, man, following your page and looking at your story, your very specific niche DC Comics memes are so funny, bro.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So funny.
Yeah. A lot of shit posting, and it's infiltrated the Bledsoe Said So Mothership Discord, unfortunately. But
No,
dude.
fortunately.
Yeah, fortunately. Shout out to the Discord, by the way. Like that thing, dude. You guys, like, speaking of like things you guys are building, like the show, also obviously, like the podcast is rad, but the Discord, like, I don't think anybody really expected you guys to like build that up as much as it has, and so like it goes off every day, dude. And I'm like constantly like, oh, I gotta check the Discord because there's so many awesome Omis on there. Like, what's rad is that like you guys have attracted people who like know way more about this stuff than I do, so they're like resources, so like
Oh yeah.
yeah, and they're always throwing memes in there too, which is hilarious. And like there's so many funny people on there that like
Yeah.
are all across the spectrum of interest on this topic. And there's people in there who are like, there's a yoga instructor. There's like experts on all the stuff that you guys talk about that like they'll offer their like advice on it and stuff. So it's rad, dude. It's rad.
Oh,
Low-key
really
help-
rad.
That thing kind of just took off on its own. It kind of just created itself. Like the people who come to the Discord and come to the Patreon and stuff, they just happen to be really incredible, amazing people. And I don't know. I mean, yeah, sure, we like listed it and created the Discord and stuff, but I don't know how much credit we can take for how awesome it is. I really
Yeah.
think it's just the people in there are so awesome. Like there's, like you said, there's I think you might have been talking about Cairo Yoga Flow. Is that who you were talking about?
I think so, yeah.
Like we've got yoga experts in there, and then like Sam meditates. He's gonna start doing a group meditation in the Discord.
Oh,
like
that's so
for
rad.
everybody. Yeah, and there's like Enochian magic readers. There's like
Astrology.
all sorts of astrologers, like
all kinds
it's
of fields and things in there.
yeah, it's
Very
a really,
eclectic,
really-
interesting. Yeah, it honestly has blown our minds at how it's just taken off.
Yeah,
crazy.
it's
Yeah.
rad, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, thank you. That's really kind of you. Yeah, it's
Very, very much
we
appreciated.
our fans are just really dope. I think they're just really smart people. Like I have no problem saying the majority of the people in there know more than me, and
Yeah.
that makes me happy because I can learn from
Right.
people like all the time. Yeah, it's a really sick community, and we're lucky to have you in there too.
Thank you,
Very.
man. Thank you.
One of the
Yeah,
first ones, actually. You were one of the very first people the
Yeah,
day that
you're
it
an
launched.
OG.
Day
Yeah.
one, dude. Day one. Like the minute you guys announced that you were, the minute that you, I remember I would like. So I guess I can get into that, like kind of how I discovered you guys. And I'll go all the way back to like you mentioned or you asked about the comic book thing. So like when I was back in 1989, I was about to be 3 years old, and what's really wild is like I remember this, and I remember being a month before my third birthday, and the 1989 Tim Burton Batman movie came out, and my parents took me to go see that in the movie theaters at this. It's called the Cinerama Dome in Hollywood, and it's right on. I want to say I don't think it's Sunset. It might be Hollywood Boulevard. Actually, it might be Sunset. Anyways, it's like a very famous. It's a very famous theater down the street from like the Chinese theater, and it's literally a dome. So the inside is like stadium seating, and it was one of the first ones to ever do that. Like now, there's a bunch of theaters with stadium seating, but this is one of the first ones back in like the late '70s, early '80s when they built it. Maybe even older than that, honestly. And so they played the premiere of Batman there, like the opening weekend. My parents took me, and I'll never forget. Projected on the screen on the curtain was the bat signal, and like that image is like seared into my brain. Like
Whoa.
I remember walking into the theater, I remember seeing the signal, and I was like a 2.5, 3 year old little kid. I'm like, what is that? And I don't even remember. I don't even remember the movie, but I remember like just the imagery.
The feeling.
Yeah, I just remember like that memory, and it stuck with me all my life. And just ever since I was a kid, I just loved the character of Batman. I loved like, the suit, the music, and all that. I would wear the cape and pretend to be him and all that. And you go to school, you go to work, you get a big boy job, you graduate from school, whatever. And it was, I forget when it was, but I started like moving around on my own. You move out of your parents' house, and then like, hey, here's all this stuff in the garage that's yours. What do you want to do with it? And it was like all my old toys, like all my old Batman toys, all my old, like I had like a cape and the cowl, I had a poster, like I'm like, oh my god, I saved all this stuff, or my parents saved it. So I took it with me, like when I first moved out, and I just kind of put it in storage. And then over time, like the internet became what it was, and what really did it was like Instagram was like popping off. I think like for me, like I think 2012 is when I really got into like social media or meeting people or talking to people. And I remember there was a buddy of mine, shout out Cult of the Batman. You can follow him on
Shout out.
Instagram.
Yeah.
But his page was like he was the first like themed Instagram page, like anything. I didn't know you people did that, like an Instagram theme page where all he did was share his like personal collection, like pictures, photos, whatever. And I'm like, that's really cool. So like I started following him, and then over time I started like doing my own one. And then snowball to like again a couple of years go by, you just meet people, other collectors, like you start meeting people who collect comic books and all that stuff. So it became a thing to where like we met so many people over time that were into the same thing. There was like a core group of like 10 to 12 of us that were always like DMing and talking. And then at one point we were like, yo, like we're always DMing, we're like let's jump on, or let's jump on a call, let's jump on a Zoom call. So we would jump on a Zoom call, or not a Zoom call, it was, what was it, Skype? Zoom didn't even exist yet.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Skype the OG.
Yeah. So we like jumped on a Skype call, very similar to like the Discord. Like we just had an open voice chat, and we would just like hang out and talk and joke around and shoot the shit. And we would make each other laugh so much. We're like, do we need to record this? And like, what if we start a podcast? So I'm embarrassed I didn't do the math. I want to say the first time we did it was like 2014. So we might be up on like 8 years of the podcast. I might be wrong. Maybe it was 2015, but long story short, we started doing the podcast. We started doing like a joint group social media. So we're on like Facebook, Instagram, and we start, recording the podcast, putting it up. Over time, people started noticing, and like before you knew it, we had like 10,000 followers. And we're like, oh my God, like, this is kind of cool. And just meeting people. I live in like the LA area, the larger Los Angeles area. And so just being at the right place in the right time, like meeting people who like work for Warner Brothers, meeting people who work for like Sideshow Collectibles, and just being in the same areas, like either like events or like comic book shops or whatever. I would like bump into or rub elbows with these people, and I was smart. Like I've always had this like, I'm sure you guys can relate. Like if I get into something, I obsess over it, and so Like I started obsessing over like what can I do with this? Like how can I make this a thing and help the group get bigger? So I was like, I know what to do. Just like make like just pretend as if I'm like somebody. So I made business cards with like my contact on it, and I made it seem as if like I was Bad Force Tom, founder of the Bad Force, and it just had like my emails on it.
You
And so whenever I,
manifested that shit.
yeah,
Literally manifested that.
shit.
Yeah.
That's what I'm hearing.
so whenever I would like meet people, I would be like, "Oh yeah, we got this. We have this group. We're a bunch of fans. We have a podcast. Would you like to whatever?" And it turned into at one point like we finally started getting guests on our podcast that were actual DC Comics writers, actual DC Comics artists. And what really kicked it off was like at the time the Batman writer, his name was Scott Snyder. And like if you read comics, if you read Batman comics, like Scott, you know Scott Snyder's name, like he's a big name. He wrote Court of Owls, which was like in 2011 one of like the most revolutionary like jumping on points of Batman comics. Everyone
It's
still
one of
loves
the
it.
best. Yeah, it's one of the best like Batman arcs there are.
That's
Like,
what the new game is about.
Yeah.
The what's
Gotham
Knights. Yeah, they got Court of Owls on there. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it's how influential he. And that was only he barely wrote that in 2011, and it's already like the main. It's already been on shows. There's Lego sets. There's like it's part of the game now. So yeah, like he's super influential. So and he's like a totally down to earth. Like he's a nerd, down to earth like fan. And so
Love it.
I can't remember specifically when it was like I got in contact with him. But I started chatting with him, and our group would chat with him, and we were like, yeah, we'd love to have you on the show. He jumped onto the show with us, the podcast, and he was super cool. He like hung out with us for like 3 or 4 hours, and afterwards he's like, hey, he goes, send me your email. I'll send it over to DC Comics. I'll make sure you guys are on the comp list. And I'm like, the comp list? He's like, yeah, the comp list. And I go, okay. And the next week, I get this email from Warner Brothers. No, it was from DC Comics. And they're like, hey, great to meet you. Scott told us to add you to our press list. Here are every weekly comic that comes out. And they just start sending us digital copies of every DC comic book that comes out that week. And so, like, so on my phone is literally every DC comic book that comes out, and they're like, if you write reviews, if you talk about it on the podcast, please send us links so we know that you guys are covering it. And like, oh my god, okay. So for like every comic that you have under DC Comics banner, like we were getting it every week. We have now contacts with DC Comics, so we would like reach out to them. They sent us like swag. We would like post swag. I got to go to one of the premieres of the Justice League on the red carpet.
Oh my gosh, I didn't know that one.
Yeah, dude, it was wild. Like, and so it's just been that since like 2014, 2015. And, our main thing is like, we're fans, and we really, to be honest with you, we just use it as an excuse to talk to comic artists and writers. And just like, that's really what we do.
Ryan, they had Todd McFarlane on.
Yeah.
That's insane. Well, I mean,
they have Kevin Conroy in their intro.
Yeah. Yeah, we talked to McFarlane during COVID too. That was like in the middle of the pandemic, I think, like 2020.
Yeah, that was a while back.
And we actually just this morning we interviewed Kelly Jones. And if you don't know the name, if you just Google Kelly Jones Batman, immediately you'll see, oh yeah, I know that Batman. I know that style. And he's like one of the most iconic Batman artists. Just interviewed him this morning. That episode will drop at some point. But like I said, like we've talked to like Lee Bermejo, the artist, he's just a monster. Jason Fabok, the artist, another monster. Clayman, he's a monster. Sean Murphy killing it with Gotham, Batman, White Knight. Like just it's been amazing. Like we've been able to talk to like almost all of our Tim Sale before he passed away, rest in peace. We talked to him a couple of years ago. It's been awesome, man. So, and long story short, got fixated on that. Was always reading comics and always getting into it. And the thing that like, I've always been into like the UFO thing. I've always been into like the UFO phenomenon ever since I was a kid, movies, whatever. And it was a couple of years ago when like, you guys can tell, at the time wasn't aware of it, but there was an obvious agenda being dripped into like the masses. And they're trying to like, all of a sudden like UFOs, Bob Lazar, all this stuff like Joe Rogan, Tom DeLonge. Yeah, and I'm like, what is going on? And I remember this was like, I think 2017 was when the New York Times article came out. I was already on it. I was already like watching and listening to podcasts by then. And I was always just fascinated, like with specifically Roswell. I love conspiracy theories. So like specifically Roswell was always so cool to me because I'm like, oh, something totally happened. You're fucking lying, and and
That's a
so
good
like
start, bro.
I've always been like super into it, and then and like all this stuff starts coming out, and at first, you know, I think with many people, especially like who found you guys for, or who eventually found you guys, I didn't know what it even was called, but I was a total nuts and bolts guy. Like
Right.
I only care about physical craft, I only care about like little
Yeah.
green booger men, like that's all I care about. Like, and I would like read books, I would watch shows, I would watch documentaries, and then eventually, dude, it was always like Skinwalker Ranch, consciousness, ghosts. I'm like, the fuck is this shit? Get the fuck out of here. Consciousness, get out of here.
Yeah.
And but it would always come up, and
That's
I was
not
always
cool,
like,
bro.
yeah, I don't want this shit. And it was like just like I would always like Skinwalker Ranch would always come up, and I'm like, what the fuck is Skinwalker Ranch? It's like it's a haunted ranch. I'm like, so stupid. Oh my god, that's not real. And then it was, I swear to you, I was on Twitter, and this was like, I mean, you could probably tell me better, Ryan, what year it might have been, but like all the stuff's in the news, all the stuff's in the media, and then like all of a sudden I see this, and it's like Twitter has this thing where it's like suggested pages or suggested follows, and I see this because you liked or because you follow, and it says Ryan Bledsoe, and all it was is Ryan's face in the photo like this, and it's the tweet just said, my family grew up in a haunted house studied by the government. That's all the tweet said. That's all the tweet said. And I'm
I
like,
mean, it's true.
yeah, and I'm like, and I remember being like, the fuck?
I can't believe
And I
I
go,
phrased it like that, man.
and what got to me was studied by the government, you know? And I'm like,
Also
what
true.
the fuck? And so like I clicked on his Twitter, like I think you had at that time you had a link to the YouTube, and it was like 2 videos on the YouTube. One of them was the burning tree.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
so
Oh
I-
man,
I-
so that would have been way back, 2019 or 2020.
Yeah. So
Far
I
before
cl-
the podcast started.
Yeah, so I clicked on it, and I'm watching this burning tree, and I have no context. I'm just watching you guys film this burning tree, and I don't remember if it was like a later text or a tweet thread or what it was where you're explaining like what happened, and then eventually someone was asking. I saw on Twitter like someone was asking, "What's your family story that you're referring to? What is it?" And you just said, "Google." You said the tweet was Google Chris Bledsoe Fayetteville incident. I'm like, okay, so I did it. So I googled Chris Bledsoe Fayetteville incident, and my mind was fucking blown, dude. Like, I think it was a podcast. The one that really did it for me was I was reading, but then I listened to one of your dad's podcast interviews. It might have been Fade to Black or something else, where it was like a 3-4 hour 2-parter where he goes into
Yeah, he
complete
did
detail.
that on Fade to Black for sure.
Yeah, it was a very detailed like interview, and so I listened to it, and that's it. I'm like, I don't give a fuck about flying saucers. I don't give a fuck about craft. Like, I'm listening, and what clicked for me was your dad. Everyone listening, for the most part, probably knows your dad's story pretty well, and the experience that he explained in your family pretty well. And what they might not know or might not have a connection to that I did was how I've been explaining with you guys for you guys. One of my favorite Batman authors, Grant Morrison, he tells people that in like 1989, I was like 1990, he had just come off of the success of writing Batman Arkham Knight Serious House on Serious Earth. It was an Arkham Asylum story. He writes the story. It comes out into the book, into the comic book shops. He already been pretty successful with like indie stuff, and so they gave him a shot on this Batman book. It goes out. It's a graphic novel. It's really nice, and it goes into comic shops. That same year, Batman 1989 by Tim Burton with Michael Keaton and Jack Nicholson comes out in the movie theaters. It blows up, becomes a blockbuster. What do people want to do? They want to go to the source material. Oh, I just saw Batman the movie. Let me go to the comic shop and buy a Batman comic book.
Yeah.
So they go into the comic shops. The most brand new, fresh comic book is Grant Morrison's comic book. So everyone bought it, and the dude had like a deal that was like $1. It was like $1 per page sold. So for every issue sold, he gets $1 per page.
Wow.
So it sold hundreds of thousands of copies. So he becomes a millionaire, like literally overnight, right?
Wow.
Multi-millionaire. So this author becomes this multi-millionaire. And this he does. If you guys Google search, if you YouTube Grant Morrison like Chaos Magic. If you YouTube that, you can watch him explain all of this. It's crazy, bro. So he talks about how he becomes this millionaire overnight, and his DC Comics is like, all right, dude, like you're the guy right now. What do you want to write next? And he's like, fuck you guys, I'm taking a break and I'm gonna go travel. I'm a millionaire, right? So he literally just like stops writing comics for a little bit, and him and his buddy were like watching this documentary on this temple in Kathmandu, in Nepal, and I forget the name of the temple. People probably listening will know, but one of the things that says like if you ascend the steps of this temple in one breath, you will attain enlightenment, and it's like 120 steps, and he's like, I can fucking do that. So he's a millionaire now, and so this is 1990, so like he's got tons of money to burn. So he's like, let's fucking go. Let's go to this temple in Kathmandu. Let's reach enlightenment. And so him and his buddy, they book a trip. They go to Nepal. They go to this temple. They find it. They get a guide. They do it. They hold their breath. They ascend the steps. So they get up there, and they're like, all right, that's it. Okay, we're gonna reach enlightenment now. And then he says, a couple days go by. He's in his hotel room, and he's in his hotel room just chilling on the bed. And he says, and he calls it, because he tries to explain to people and they just don't understand, and especially back then, right? They don't understand how his easiest explanation to people is, I was abducted by aliens. That's what he tells people.
Right.
But that's not what it was. What he describes is these balls of swirling metallic light came in from the walls and the ceiling of his hotel room, and they came to him and they told him, what do you want to know? And he's like, what the fuck? He's like, and it was the most real thing I'd experienced. I thought I was going crazy, but at the same time, I was very much in my right mind. So he's like, all right, I want to know where life started. So he says they took his consciousness out of his body, and they shot, like, he felt himself like shooting into space. He sees himself leaving Earth, and they take him to some galaxy, and it's obviously unfamiliar to him, but he doesn't, he couldn't tell you where it was, but he's like, this is where life started. And he's like, what do you want to know now? And he said, I want to know the meaning of life. And so he says that they explained to him that the meaning of life is there is no time, there is no space. That is a figment of your imagination. We do not exist in time and space. But in order to learn and to grow, you have to create time to grow in time and learn. So what these beings, he calls them like he calls them the beings. I forget what he calls them. Let's call them celestial beings. These celestial beings explain to him.
My dad calls them too.
Yeah.
Celestial beings.
These beings explain to him, we have to grow souls in this physical plane so that you literally grow and learn. And then once you grow and learn, that's when you reach, however many times you reach enlightenment and you become like the celestial beings. And so the description that he gave was, what he experienced was, and he says this in the video, you see yourself as you are right now, like right now you're you right now sitting in this chair, but that's not really you. What you are is a process. Mm-hmm. What you are is like a caterpillar. You're not a person, you're more like a caterpillar from birth to death. And so the caterpillar like comes out and expands, but you don't see yourself as that. You see yourself as one sliver of moment in time. But the reality is you're this process. And so he was able to then see what this is. He saw himself as the process, and he saw himself as what the celestial beings do is they create this third dimension to grow life, to be able to reach maturity, and then to learn however many times you have to, and you keep doing it until you figure it out, and then you reach like a certain point. And so he says he has this experience, and the whole time he's telling you, he's like, this was more real than anything I've ever experienced. He's like, I came back to my body, and it was as if I was watching a fucking black and white shitty TV. Like, that's what this reality feels like. This third dimension is nothing compared to what I experienced. He's like, that other experience was so much more real. So I'm listening to this guy, like 10 years ago. I'm like, all right, dude. Yeah, okay, Grant Morrison, you got abducted by aliens.
Yeah. Are you crazy,
all right, whatever,
bro?
guy.
Yeah. Flash forward to like 2019 or 2017, whatever it was. And I think 2019. And I'm hearing Chris Bledsoe say the same thing.
Nearly identically the same thing.
The same thing.
They just use different
context, like different, like
same
and
core principle.
And it's like, and it's funny because like even the way Grant Morrison said it was like, I just tell people I was abducted by aliens because I don't know how else to describe this. Mm-hmm. Like it's the only thing that people know how to hold on to. It's like that makes sense to them, even though it sounds kind of weird, but that makes sense to you.
Well, here's something crazy real quick, bro.
Go ahead.
You know how everybody, or at least on the internet, like when they're referring to our family and our experiences, they call them light beings.
Yeah.
or people say the lights or whatever. That was actually me who branded that. My dad never called them light beings. He only ever called them angels or the beings or the entities. I just yeah, angels. He called them angels or the being. It was actually me who branded them as light beings. And the reason I say that is because I wanted to address something you said earlier real quick. I don't mean to completely derail where you were going, but it blew my mind that you saw one of my earlier tweets where I was like typing, "My house was haunted and studied by the government." But I've been trying to come up with this different verbiage to hook people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I can't be this 28, 29-year-old dude running around saying, "I've seen angels. I've seen angels." Because just like when you reading Grant Morrison in the 90s, they're going to be like, that shit's crazy, bro. Come on, we don't like church. So I don't know. That's crazy. I started calling them light beings.
It worked, dude. And I'm trying to remember specifically what it was that hooked me. I'm pretty sure it was and studied by the government.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's the part that hooked me is
because you do things vague to kind of be mysterious. Yeah.
and like, you hear about people living in whatever they may call it, a haunted house or believe that is. But then how many of those people have been studied by clandestine agencies? And that's what hooked me. And then I remember like, studying and seeing the photos. And that's the thing is like, what's funny about your family that when I tell people about your family and I'm like, yeah, dude, there's people out there that like may have these experiences and they say this, but like, you need to understand who they're in the fucking picture with. Like the people that they're in your family photos, fucking photos of Jim Semivan like on your floor, like wrapped in a burrito of like a sleeping bag or something.
Oh, a work-on blanket. Yeah.
Yeah, dude. Like,
Who do you think took the picture? Me. It's like my shoes in the picture.
And then like your dad chilling in the living room with Joe McMoneagle and what's his name?
Alexander.
That photo. That's probably one of my favorite photos that you guys have. Because if people understood who those guys were and the implications of like what they've done and how the government has been involved with like your family, it's just
the craziest one probably is my dad literally at Cape Canaveral smoking a cigar with these NASA scientists, rocket scientists, as they just launched a freaking rocket out to space, and my dad got to sit right there and watch on the launch pad. Obviously you have to be a mile or two away, but because of the fallout and all that, but. That's crazy.
Where no one else, aside from like the engineers, the scientists, and the astronauts, are ever allowed to step.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, like I in that photo, it's funny because like most people will see it and like, oh, that's cool. He's at Cape Canaveral. It's like, dude, he's in a room at Cape Canaveral where no one is allowed.
Yeah.
No one is allowed.
What they say about that? You know what they say about that? They say, oh, anybody can get a tour there.
Not that tour. Yeah. They don't get the Chris Bledsoe tour. Yeah. That ain't how that works. So that's really dope. Your like childhood connection with Batman and led you to Grant Morrison, which led you to the Bledsoe story, which then led you to this world at large. Is that a good way to sum it up?
It basically was like the two. So separately, your family story and Grant Morrison's story separately is like out of context sounds wild, but the fact that they match up so closely is insane to me. That
it's nutty, bro.
Yeah, and another thing too is a part of it that like made me like that clicked for me too is like I was raised Catholic, and I've always I have hated how the Catholic Church, at least in my experience, I know I gotta specify it. I felt that it was always like, okay, here's what you believe, here's what you do, here's the moves, here's what you eat. You eat the Jesus, the crouton of Christ, and then like you believe this, and that's what you believe, right? I'm like, okay, but what about no, shh. I'm like, but that doesn't no, shh. And I'm like, and Mary, Mary, she's super important. I'm like, well, how? And like, just trust me. Just trust me.
She's a young lady.
She's extremely, and she's extremely important. Yeah, and so I have like family members who are Christian. I have family members who are like whatever. Mary is like Mary is like not revered the way Catholics revere Mary. No, and that was always bizarre to me. Like, why do we make such a big deal about Mary?
All, by the way, like not at all.
To the point where actually like other like Christian sects say like it's kind of like you should not like uphold saints or Mary because it's
100%.
What's the word?
It's like blasphemy. It's like
no idol. It's like
it's like you're idolizing. Yeah, and
well, dude, that when you start digging into Catholicism and the history and like you find out that literally you find out that like the Vatican is basically a mafia.
Isn't
Yeah.
that the Godfather 2, by the way?
Yeah, Godfather 3
three. Yeah, it's
is
like
where
literally the Vatican is involved with the mafia.
Michael Corleone goes to visit with the Vatican to like, I think he is asking for permission or something about like, and it's about some crazy shit. Like I'm about to take out 3 more families again. Is that okay? And the Pope's like, yes. But yeah,
it's just crazy. Like you find out that all of these things, they just like sat around one day and decided that this was the truth.
Yeah.
This was the quote unquote truth. And like Mary being revered was one of them. Jesus's like his divinehood was one of them.
Yeah.
The calendar was one of them. Christmas, like they just sat down and decided all of it.
Right.
They took what books they didn't want out.
They had a council. They had the whole
Yeah.
council and everything.
Yep.
The
Real history,
Vatican
people.
Council's
Real
doing-
history,
yeah.
people.
A shout out real quick to Hermetic Philosophy by the 3 Initiates. Shout out to my buddy Sean who runs Desert Wastelands Productions. But like that was something else that I was shout out to this book.
What are you laughing at, Ryan? What are you giggling for?
I love that. That was such a me move. You just shouted out the entire Hermetic Philosophy by the 3 Initiates.
So like I was having this conversation with a buddy of mine who runs a death metal record label, and
Wow.
Excuse me? Well, it's like a basement. It's a bedroom. It's a bedroom death metal.
Wait a minute. That's the elephant in the room. We haven't even acknowledged this. We're all beer metalheads here.
Yeah, like
Tom is also super into metal.
Yeah, super
really?
into metal.
What's your subgenre of the hundreds there are?
What I love about me is that like I kind of dip my toe. I will listen to most any genre. So like, but I was brought up like most guys my age. I'm like, what? I'm almost 40. Holy shit! Wow. So I was like,
no way, I don't believe.
Yeah, I think I'm 30. I think I'm 37. I think I'm 36 or 37. I forget.
You think, bro?
89. What is that? 37? 37.
89? That's 33, bro.
No, 86. I was born in 86.
Oh, you were born in 86. Okay. And I know that number off the top of my head, by the way, because Chris Jr. was born in 89.
There you go.
33. That's why I'm not a mathematician. I suck at math. That was just...
So I'm 36. Yeah. So I'm 36, and I started out with like pop punk. I think punk, like Southern California, like skate punk. I'm from Southern California. So like Southern California skate punk, like...
A lot of Blink 182, bro.
Even before, like so that they were like they blew up the scene, but it was like NoFX, Melancholy, Guttermouth, Pennywise, like all those bands. Geez. Yeah, like all those, especially like Death by Stereo, like all those bands from Southern California. Like I was super into, and that led me just like listening to radio rock, and then eventually like I think everybody listened to like a Metallica song once, and like, what's this?
Yeah. Metallica and then you're like, Slayer or something.
Yeah,
like Iron
and then
Maiden.
And then I remember. Like I was like into Metallica, I was into like Megadeth, I was into like the thrash bands, and then what really did it was the magazines. Like at the time before the internet, all the magazines were really big on like they would put in like what reviews and what bands other guys were in, and in the magazines, the guys in the bands were like shouting out their favorite bands, and so and in the liner notes of their records and stuff, and so like like. I think a big one, to be honest, was like Slipknot's first album. I remember them doing interviews, and in multiple interviews, like Joey the drummer is like he's like listen to Venom, listen to Bathory, listen to Norwegian black metal. I was like, okay, Joey, and so like
yes, sir.
Yeah,
yes, sir.
I did it, and I was like, I started listening to death metal, I started listening to black metal, and it was too much for me at the time, like way too much. I'm like, I'm not ready for this. But what was kind of popular. Way too advanced. And then eventually like, I did get into it. But I think like when I was in college, that was when like Gent was coming out. That's when like deathcore was coming out.
That's kind of like what me and Nick came up on.
Yeah.
Gent, deathcore,
metalcore.
The post hardcore.
The OG metalcore was the first shit for
metalcore.
Me. I mean for us really. Like Killswitch Engage formed me as a person. I wouldn't be the same person if it wasn't for Killswitch Engage. Like, dude, I'm listening to all their albums back to back, and it's all about like love and light and treating each other nice.
Positivity.
Believing in yourself and like all this shit. And I'm just like, I can fucking do anything. Yeah. And that honestly was the gateway into my love of metal was Killswitch Engage. And after that was all the genty deathcore stuff.
I just saw Killswitch was it like last Thursday? Actually,
Who's the
yeah.
vocalist right now? It's always
Jesse.
Okay, cool.
But
cool.
last song of the night on their set, they're like, "We got a special guest for you guys, Howard
Did
Jones."
Howard? No!
Howard, bro, and they
That's
did
crazy.
They did Signal Fire.
they did Signal Fire together. Yeah,
Yo,
that
that's
was their
fucking
closer,
crazy.
dude. It
That's
was
amazing, dude.
wild, and
That was me and Nick's first ever concert together. Was Killswitch Engage.
Yeah, dude. And
Yeah,
that was
long
with
time
Howard.
ago.
That was with Howard.
Yeah, with Howard Jones.
Yeah,
back
they're-
when it was Into Heartache and Mike. What was that
As
album
Daylight
called? As
Dies.
Daylight Dies. Yeah.
Yeah.
Killswitch is probably on like my Mount Rushmore of metalcore, 100%. Like,
Same.
Oh yeah.
they're like, in my opinion, like, you know, they're my favorite metalcore band. I think if you had to ask me, they're
Oh,
fucking
yeah.
Probably
incredible.
mine too. Like I
Yeah.
ebb and flow, and I have different favorites. Me and Ryan were super into August Burns Red and Devil Wears Prada.
Devil Wears Prada was my first, by the way. If we're talking
Yeah,
this
yeah.
genre, that was the band that like. I mean, I grew up listening to like Disturbed, just like every other kid in
Right.
the early 2000s. Fucking Slipknot and all
Avenged
this.
Sevenfold.
Avenged Sevenfold, a lot of that stuff. But that's not.
Mm.
That's like just on the other side of the door to the metal that we're talking about now. But Devil Wears
Yeah.
Prada is what just yanked
That's
me
when-
through and hooked me.
When you start putting in synths and keys and like that melody
Yeah,
and that
singing,
like,
bro, and singing
yeah.
over heavy music. Come
yeah,
on,
yeah,
now.
yeah, and
Come on
and
now. They should mix.
yeah, it's totally, I totally get you there. Basically, like that whole like adding the very epic sounding, and that
Yeah.
talking about Tom Barber, like his band does that like flawlessly.
Which
like
one, Chelsea Grant or Darko?
both of them, like
Yeah,
with
both
of them.
with
Honestly, both of
with
them,
like
yeah.
the ability to kind of bring like layered emotional, like just the key. I feel like the way they use melody and keys, like and that additional kind of seasoning it opens up big time.
Yeah.
And
I feel like we should have an entire sideshow, the three of us, just where we talk about metal.
Oh my
Dude,
god!
Like
dude.
we should just start a whole nother podcast.
I
about
could do it all
metal.
day.
I've been really bad about it, but I basically was trying to find a way of doing that. I call it For the Horde. And so I do Bat Force Radio, but then I've interviewed what's his name? Paul from I interviewed Paul, the drummer from Cannibal Corpse.
Wow,
I
sick.
interviewed Cam Lee, the original vocalist for Montas, which eventually became Death, the death metal band.
Shit.
I've interviewed Travis Ryan from Cattle Decapitation. Shout out San Diego grindcore band. But
Wow.
Shout
yeah,
out
dude, like
grindcore in general.
Yo, I used to low key kind of like dip my toes in the grindcore, bro. Like something
Grindcore's
about
so
it when
bad.
I was younger.
yeah,
I just,
dude, you used to like make fun of it, but deep down, I knew. I was
You
like,
see?
yeah,
yeah, like I mean, come on. I was
like,
into Impending Doom like big time. Their first
Yeah.
album was straight up grindcore. What's it called? Nailed
Yeah.
Dead Risen.
Yep.
yeah.
That was some heavy
Yep.
shit, bro.
Hey,
I used
Dead
to
Risen,
love
yeah.
that album. I used to listen to
Yeah.
it on YouTube all the time.
They
Yeah.
still slap too. Listen, I could talk about metal forever, but I kind of want to talk about Department of Truth.
Let's do it, dude.
Yeah, for
Let's
sure.
do it.
And I wanted to.
How did you
bring us-
find? Okay. Oh yeah, you go ahead, Ryan.
Well, I was just gonna say we can't go without mentioning this. For the record, my brother Jeremy, when he was younger, true story, he used for a brief stint while he was like in preschool, he would wear a Batman costume every day, which is funny because you said you were wearing the cape, and I just have such vivid memories of Batman being so significant in our childhood. Jeremy was obsessed with Batman, Batman, and at the same time I was obsessed with. You see the shirt I'm wearing here? I had I didn't realize it would turn out this way, but same like with you. When I was 3, man, first time I ever saw Goku, I was hooked. I was obsessed. It was the hair, it was the power pole,
Yeah.
it was the tail, because at the time it was Dragon Ball, and the little goofy orange outfit, and the little cloud, and everything about it just rewired my
Right.
brain, bro. And like I get
Yeah.
it. It's like that obsession. And anyway, so at that time, I had my little interests, and we had this big old bucket of Batman toys, bro. And I just have the most vivid memories. Jeremy and I are 18 months apart, so barely, a year and a half, or we are a year and a half in the age difference there. So we did everything together, played with all the same toys, and I remember being that young, 3 or 4, and knowing pretty much the only word, my name. Every little kid learns their name, and being so fascinated with Robin because he had an R on his belt, and I had a Robin toy and a Raphael toy because they each had an
Hell
R
yeah.
on their belt.
Yeah.
And like that was my curse as a little brother growing up playing Batman and shit. I never
Yeah.
got to be Batman.
Oh man,
I never
dude.
got to be Batman. I had to be Robin, bro. So you know
Okay.
what? Here's to the sidekicks.
Yo, listen, talking about Jeremy and Batman, I have to tell this quick little anecdote. The funniest thing happened the other night. I mean, this was so funny. So Casey, my wife, and I, shout out Casey, love you, babe.
Shout out Casey.
Shout out Casey.
We went to the Bledsoe's little. They have a house like on this pond where this is where Chris lives. We went over there. We were hanging out with the whole family. We're outside seeing dozens of orbs, more than I've ever seen in my life.
It was an intense night, for the record. I mean, for anybody in the world, it was wild streaks. Nick is not exaggerating.
There's probably 10 or 15 of us out there, and it was literally like we're like breaking our necks looking around because there's an orb, there's a crazy
flashes,
streak across the flashes. It was so
They're
insane.
changing directions.
Wow.
And the funniest part is for the entire hour, Jeremy Van Bledsoe was on his phone deciding if he should buy a Superman chair or a Batman chair. The whole time. He did not give a fuck about the orbs in the slightest. Like he's so over. That's the
so
thing with
desensitized.
Oh yeah, the Bledsoes are desensitized, man.
This
like
is a Tuesday night.
Literally, it's another night. He's sitting there.
Bro.
We would be talking about, like, me and Casey, like, oh my God, look at that one. And then did you see that? Okay, look a little bit higher than the tree. And Jeremy will walk up behind us and he's like, dude, they have a World of Warcraft chair, man. I don't know. I kind of want that one.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I started calling him Chairme for the rest of the night.
Chairme.
You did, Jeremy. Yeah, you really did, bro.
Chairme
But it's
Bledsoe.
true, man. He really.
Yeah.
This is a true story. And like,
So funny.
listen, I want to reiterate here. Desensitized or not, that was a crazy night. I'm talking. We saw like some big ass streaks, bro, and we would see orbs crossing over each other. Which, when they do that, it's like, come on, they're not planes, they're not satellites. They don't
Right.
do that shit. They don't run into each other like that. You know what I mean?
They were doing all kinds of weird stuff.
Big thick streaks and like and when those nights there's a crowd of us out there, and sometimes we might be spread 10, 15, 20 feet away apart. One of them's looking this way, one of them's looking that way, and it's like, look, we're screaming, look, oh my God, that way. And Jeremy's face down on his phone looking for his chair, bro.
Yeah.
Like, that's
For an
just how
hour. Yo, and then the hour after that, and we're all inside hanging out with Teddy, Chris's son, Teddy, and he's still talking about this fucking chair, like literally for 2 hours straight. He talked about this fucking chair.
I hope he got
Jeremy,
it.
Man. He did. He bought it.
Good.
He bought it that night.
got the Superman, bro.
Yeah.
Yep.
Shout out Jeremy, man. I can't believe I got to hang out with him in Vegas. That's so wild.
Well,
dude.
look, that kind of ties in a little bit with Department of Truth. So do you want?
That's why I brought Jeremy up, by the way, to segue into this mind-blowing synchronicity. Now we're catching up to the present. We're going to move into the Department of Truth. So the whole reason I brought up Jeremy is because he had a work trip in Vegas. He's sitting in the car with me. He happens to be in town in Wilmington. We live two and a half hours apart. I know. Yeah, definitely. It was a podcast weekend. So the three of us were in the car. And it's just total random. And Tom, you call me out of the blue.
Yeah.
And one thing led to another, and both of you in that moment realized you were going to be in Vegas at the same time, which, remember, we live on the other side of the country from Vegas.
Right.
So total synchronicity. So one thing leads to another. You guys linked up, and boom, now we have the present where you guys met the Department of Truth author. If you want to kick off.
Yeah. So I'm trying to remember how exactly I it's just, I know why. Okay. So the author of Department of Truth, his name is James Tynion, and James Tynion actually took over writing Batman after, I want to say it was Scott Snyder. I think he was maybe an author or two after, but he was one of the main Batman writers afterwards. And the thing about James Tynion is, okay, he's a Batman writer, but the Batman stuff that he wrote was okay. The stuff that he writes that's like the self-published like indie stuff that he does, 10 times better. Like, he's a big time horror writer, so he does like this book called Last House on the Lake. He does a book called Is Something Is Killing the Children. He's got a spin-off of that as well called House of Slaughter. Another book that he did is called Department of Truth. And the thing about him
I'm
is...
I'm sorry to interrupt you. So Department of Truth is one of these indie ones then?
It's one of so Department of Truth, in my opinion, is my favorite and his best. But as far as like critical acclaim, it's not even the best one per critics. So like his other stuff has won, all of his stuff has won awards, but Department of Truth is like not even the one that's won all the awards. But obviously, for obvious reasons, as you guys know, like that's kind of why I liked it and why you guys are probably liking it. So he's writing the story, and I remember like joining his newsletter, and in his newsletter he's like, I'm going to start writing my own indie books. One of them is that he actually started was called Blue Book, and it was like a wink at Project Blue Book, a wink at UFOs, and it follows like the experiencer side of like the UFO phenomenon. And so I knew that he was into like the phenomenon and all the different types of ways it kind of spins out. And then at some point he had to announce that he's partnering with this artist named, oh my god, I can't believe I'm forgetting his name of the artist. If one of you guys have the books, I bought a freaking original page from him.
You talking
Anyways,
about the Department of Truth?
Yeah, the
I
main
don't know
artist.
his name.
I
don't
can't
know
believe,
his name.
dude.
But
The
I need
nerds.
to. I'm gonna look it up.
Yeah. Alex, shout out Alex. If is Alex even around?
He is, but
he's
he's because we're doing this virtually. We don't want our mics to cross. It's a little
Gotcha.
bit
It's all
different
good.
setup. So he's
Anyways,
listening.
Is it M. Simmons?
Martin Simmons. Jesus
Martin
Christ.
Simmons.
Oh my
Okay.
god, I'm gonna get roasted for not remembering that. But I'm so
Oh,
excited
whatever.
about.
Listen, bro.
Yeah,
this is Bledsoe said so. I promise
Right.
you, no one's gonna roast you for not knowing the Department of Truth artist.
Oh
An
yeah.
artist
I
out of-
forget. I forget I'm not on Bat Force Radio.
That's
so
right.
I'm
That's right.
good,
Yeah,
I'm good.
you're safe here, bro.
Yeah. So Martin Simmons, the artist, is an incredible artist, and they pair up and they start talking about we're gonna do this comic book about like esoteric truths and like clandestine agencies and UFO phenomenons and everything related to conspiracy theories. And my ears perked right up. And
It's so cool.
I want to say this book started coming out, the first couple of issues, like right around the time like your dad's going public now, that you're going public, you're doing all this stuff is all at the same time. So I'm sitting here like, what the fuck is going on, right? Like, I'm eating all this stuff up, and so little by little, I'm reading Department of Truth, and I'm like, this is the fucking Bledsoes. Like, this is what I already knew this because of the Bledsoes. I've already heard of it, and the thing about the Department of Truth is, I'm not sure how far you got, Nick, or how there's.
I am almost caught up. I believe I'm almost caught up because they're on issue like 21 or something like that.
Yeah,
right?
they just came out with the 21st issue, I think.
Yeah. I think I got to like 17 or so.
Yeah, and
It's so good.
If you're listening and you enjoy the Bledsoe story, obviously you're listening, so you do, and you want to see how there's all these like weird synchronicities that are occurring in pop culture right now. This is one of them. Like, this is one of the most popular indie books. They already sold the rights for a television show, so a television show is coming.
Oh wow.
God, that's gonna be
Television
incredible.
show's coming, and so
Wow.
like I'm reading it, and these are all nods to a lot of things that you guys talk about on the podcast, where essentially what happens is the world is not the way you know it, and the reality is based on what we believe. And so if enough people believe in one thing, it will change the fabric of reality. So the whole point of the Department of Truth is they're like the Men in Black. So if enough people believe in a conspiracy theory like flat Earth, then the Earth literally starts to change and become flat. And then obviously like that kills a bunch of people and things happen. And so the Department of Truth's whole job is to go in there and like murk the dudes that are in charge of pushing this conspiracy agenda so it stops, right? And there's
But they
nods
also
to,
have to kill like anybody that becomes aware that this
Right.
is a thing. They
so
just have to snuff them out.
innocent
Yep.
people who have nothing. They're just innocent bystanders who for some reason get caught up in this. And that's what the main character Cole is starting to see, like the ugliness of. He thinks he's on the good guys team. He's part of the US government. He's like CIA, right? Oh, I'm a good guy. And he starts to realize that like it's much deeper. There's way more layers to it. And one of my favorite things is that they call her the Scarlet Woman, or they call her the Lady, or the Lady in Red. And there is this, like, you don't know, is she an antagonist? Is she a protagonist?
Yeah.
She's this force, this spirit that's always there in the background, always, like, kind of observing and pushing humanity. And they straight up say it in one of the issues, she's the divine feminine, or she represents the divine
I
feminine.
need to read this. And let me
You
just say
have
real
to.
quick. Literally bless you, dude. Thank you so much for sending me that issue the other
Oh,
day.
yeah.
The other day, Jeremy gave me that, and I was getting all my stuff packed, and I was at my parents' house. We were both out of town. I left it there.
Yeah.
But I really appreciate that, man. That was very thoughtful.
Of course. And like, we were
It was
so,
volume
like,
3, by the way.
yeah, I meant to send the first or second volume. I forget why I picked out the third one. The thing is like we meant to get it signed by the artist and the writer, but we were so like like so excited to be meeting them, and like I was so excited to be with Jeremy that I completely forgot to get them to sign it.
They
But
really liked you a lot, bro.
oh, I'm
Yeah.
glad. What was I saying? But the thing about that one specifically, that third trade, is that one starts out with this like priest from the Vatican visiting this witch in this little Italian town, and the
Oh,
art
that one was so good, dude.
and like I don't want to give too many spoilers of the story, but like just go read it. But basically, I'll give you a little spoiler.
Yeah.
Alert.
Spoiler
Yeah,
alert. We know.
spoiler.
Good.
Yeah.
But it basically like what you realize is you think this priest is coming to visit this old woman because you don't realize you don't really know his intentions in visiting her, and it turns out it's because this witch she's not a witch, she's not evil, she's not bad, she knows the truth about the Catholic Church, and what the Catholic Church did was it falsified like decades of information to make it seem as if the Catholic Church was always in charge or always in power when there was like this rising power in the East and like the Muslim power was rising. So the Catholic Church created who was
Pope
it that
Charlemagne. Pope
yeah,
Charlemagne.
they made up the story of Pope Charlemagne. They created this. They created this idea. They created this story so that people would rally behind it and believe it and say, "Oh no, I'm Catholic. This is the way." And blah blah blah. And so this woman tells him, like, "I know the fucking truth, dude. I know what you guys have done." And this priest is like he's like doesn't know. He goes, "Holy shit! This little old woman knows the truth." And he was tasked to kill her. That was the whole reason why he shows up to kill her. But then I think he, whatever reason, lets her live because he's just so blown away at like the truth this
Nah,
lady's
he
spreading.
killed her.
Does he? Okay, I
Yeah,
forget.
yeah. He was like completely mind blown,
Yeah.
and by the time it came to it, he almost killed her like he killed her like super quickly because she started to get to him.
Right.
Like the things that she was saying started
Yeah.
to get to him, and he's like, "Fuck, man, I think this is
Right.
probably true, but I have to kill this chick anyway."
Yeah. And
That sucked, man.
what's amazing is the concepts in the comic they mirror like the things that your family and your dad has experienced so much. It's weird. It's almost like, okay, like is this another kind of like attempt at like trickling this information into the masses the way that like is we're hearing is supposed to be done. And what really blew me the fuck away, dude, Google it. If you guys are listening to this and you want to see how much the Bledsoes are somehow tied to this comic book, Google Tyler Boss Department of Truth cover, and then Google the Chris Bledsoe. I forget what's your dad's friend who painted that photo.
Doug Ald. AULD.
Google Doug Ald, Chris Bledsoe painting, and
Lady.
put the cover and put that painting side by side, and it's the same images, the same imagery. It's the your dad's photo or your dad's painting is the lady. There's an owl in a tree. There's a UFO in the background, and there's the cow, the sacred cow, right next to the lady. Right.
Yeah.
All of it from your dad's description.
Yeah,
and
because
so
she
the
appeared literally as a bull, and
Yeah, and the Department of Truth cover and this is the artist of the variant cover, and he also did that issue. I think I want to say issue number 12 or 13. I can't remember, maybe 17. But Tyler Boss, the artist, did a cover. It's the lady in red, the Crimson Woman, with a cow next to her, a UFO behind her, and it's like, what the fuck?
It's like identical. If you look at them side by side, they're positioned in like the exact
poses.
same. And then beyond that, if that's not enough, just go read issue 7. Issue 7 is entirely about orbs.
That's right.
It's about like orbs showing. It's about like the first. They literally say in issue 7 that like one of the characters, his name is Hawk. He's so cool. He's like, don't you think it's a little weird that 2 years after we started using nukes, there's all these UFO sightings all of a sudden? There's UFOs everywhere. And then he basically is telling the chronology of the development of UFO sightings in America.
Mm-hmm.
And very quickly they turn from UFOs to orbs.
Mm-hmm.
And he even describes like encounters where these are actual documented encounters, by the way, encounters where the UFOs like turn into orbs. Mm-hmm. And make it known to the person that they're before that they can take any shape. And they even go on to say that like these beings are higher versions of ourselves, and they're trying to guide us to become like them. Like, I mean, it's like
Which is what
identical.
they told my dad.
That's what I'm saying,
That's
dude.
what the actual
it's
beings
not,
told my dad.
this is not like when Tom says this is so wrapped up in the same stuff that the Bledsoes are wrapped up in. It's not like it's kind of similar. It's like identical. Like,
See, that's crazy because I have not read this. We have not met these people. This is
Right.
total synchronicity. This is total happenstance.
Yeah. You know what it reads like to me? It reads like if they hadn't if the I can't remember if it was the dudes who did is it the Conjuring dudes?
Uh-huh.
Or
They
like
almost
let's
did a movie about us.
right.
Almost.
So if like this reads to me like someone came to your family, like that would have happened. Like, hey, we want to tell your story, but we want to make it like cool and weird and like tie in other things. This is what that reads like to me. It's like,
oh my
this is-
God. And Cole reminds me so much of Ryan.
yeah,
Which character is that?
He's the main character.
Main character.
Oh.
Yeah, and basically,
And
Now I
he's-
gotta read it.
he's constantly
Yeah.
he's constantly wrestling back and forth with like, I'm supposed to be a good guy, but look at what we're doing. We're lying to people and we're pushing an agenda and we're hiding the truth from them, and they deserve to know the truth. But the truth is fucking dangerous and scary and could potentially change everyone's worldview. But shouldn't they know it, even if that's the case? And on top of it, there's just like there's so many layers going on at the same time of just it sounds just like your family, dude. Like the thing about how your dad has this experience, you start experiencing things, your friends and your extended family start experiencing things, the government starts showing up and they're like, hey, we're the good guys,
Yeah.
we're gonna study you and
We're gonna make a
don't
documentary
worry,
about you.
we have your best interests at heart and we're going to tell everyone how great you are. And then, like you said, that first phase, you realize, oh, they're here to make us look crazy.
Yeah.
They're here
that's
to
in the book. That's
Yeah.
in Department of
Yeah.
Truth. They do that.
that's
to
their
the main
job. That's what they
character.
do. Yeah, they do that. They
they do.
gaslight them. They make them seem as if they're crazy. They make other people seem as if you're crazy, all to discredit you. Because, and this is like what I love about the comic book, which kind of reflects your family too, is your family, which I forget what episode it was of the podcast, but you're like fucking, what'd you say? He's like, yeah, Orbs showed up and like flexed on this fucking Orbs showed up and flexed on DARPA or some shit and like told him don't fuck with the Bledsoes or whatever.
Yeah.
It wasn't DARPA, but I know exactly what you're talking about.
Whoever.
It was it was somebody from the Weird Desk.
Weird Desk,
which is
Yeah.
like a very it's
Yeah.
a disinformation channel from the Pentagon. Most people do not know about this, and actually, I think that's the first time I've said that phrase on this very show. I've said it on
whatever episode that was.
I don't think I
Yeah.
said Weird Desk though. I think I've only said that on Tinfoil Hat. Anyway, the Weird Desk is this department in the Pentagon, and they harass real experiencers. I'm literally one of them. I'm sitting here like trying to blow the whistle on this stuff, and they spread disinformation, and they're responsible for a lot of the like targeted harassment on social media. You know, you see every time I challenge our listeners, if my dad or not my dad, but if I go on Twitter and I post an orb or something, some sort of photo or something of this phenomenon, $10,000 bet you go look at every one of those posts and there's going to be these random ass bot accounts just hating on it and saying it's dust or this or that or blah blah blah. That's the Weird Desk. There are these people by the Pentagon employed to just harass and sow discord. And anyway, long story short, this guy was from this group. He put a death threat on our family, and an orb appeared behind him and scared the shit out of him, and he never came back.
So rad.
Yeah.
The thing about like what it tells me about your family is like the government who is supposed to be in control, the government who's supposed to have all the power, like these people who have all this knowledge and information, they're frustrated and angry that they're just a bunch of fucking nerds that like they're just a bunch of dorks. They're all dorks, and like this fucking family in Fayetteville is interfacing with this like phenomenon. Like, how the fuck do we why can't like they're just trying to hold on to the power, so they're like deflecting and feeding misinformation and try to like they're getting information from you, taking what they want. And then they're trying to the masses. They're telling, they're Bledsoe's weird or the kids are weird.
Yeah,
whatever.
or publicly they're like, we can't substantiate their claims. We don't have the evidence. We don't have
that shit's in Department of Truth as well.
Right.
Like that's what it's basically, dude. It's so fucking crazy, and like it's hard to recommend a specific issue because every issue is so mind blowing and so directly related to your family. But like they talk in the book about. Like that character I was talking about, Hawk, he calls himself the Magic Man. because he can make anything happen. He can, like, they use him essentially when one of these stories starts picking up too much wind. His job is to deflect and to like sow discourse and misinformation and like kick people off the trail and shit like that. Like that's literally his job in the U.S. government, is just to throw people off the scent. But
He's the
there's
weird desk.
Wow.
exactly, he's like the weird desk.
Yeah, it's the weird
Dude,
desk.
there's this one of the issues is about Bigfoot, and
I bought a page. I don't have it on me right now, but I bought a Bigfoot page from Martin Simmons because I fucking love that so much.
No way.
Yeah, it's
Oh
from
my
a
god, you gotta
spin-off
take a
yeah.
pic. I want to see it.
I'll send it to you guys. Yeah.
That's the Bigfoot episode was like so touching and sweet because and it reminded me so much of you and your dad, Ryan.
Yeah, dude.
It was like it was these letters that this father and a son were writing back and forth to each other about like how basically the guy had seen Bigfoot, and he like from that point forward he was just obsessed. He had to have some kind of tangible proof that, you know, that he saw what he saw and whatever. And like the son is like always believes him, but it sows a lot of discourse in the family with like the mom not believing, and it creates all these problems and all this stuff. But
it destroys their family.
Childhood. That's my
that's
childhood.
what I'm saying, man.
It destroys their family.
It did virtually.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons that issue was so touching, because it was like this really sweet relationship between a father and son where they have this like mutual understanding. And obviously you have that with your dad and all your siblings, which is awesome. But I highly recommend you read that one. It was like vicariously cathartic for me reading it, like thinking about you and your dad. I was like,
that's sweet.
Damn, dude, this needs to be read by Ryan.
I appreciate that, man. I've been, you know, as you guys know, my dad's writing a book right now, and we're so close to getting finished. I mean, I think they just finished like chapter 19 today, and I've read 1 through 18, and it's, you know, so far I'm loving it. And I might be biased; it's the story of my dad, but there's a few chapters in there that make me tear up over certain various things, and like there's a few chapters about me being a little kid and like sneaking around the house and asking dad about things, and it was totally true. And like when I got, you know, older to where I could drive and go out and about, you know, in college, stay off somewhere for the weekend, me and dad would get up and we would be going to these UFO conferences for years. And that was our relationship, was I was the one who went to these places with dad and met these people. And, oh, someone from, you know, CIA is going to be here this weekend. Anybody want to come? It was always me.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah,
I
that
feel like
literally
if you
was
read
my
that-
childhood.
I feel like if you read that issue, I really think you should just read them all. But if you read that issue, I think it would really resonate with like a super sweet, tender part in your soul. Like it did that for me, and it wasn't even my experience.
Yeah,
like it's truly a prolific comic book in every way.
Yeah, like your dad is lucky that he has like you guys that never like doubt. Like, you never doubted him. You never. Like you guys never
Not a single
judged
part
him.
of me ever doubted him.
Yeah, and you never let it push you away from him, which is super rare considering, you know, what it could have done to your family. And this story is the opposite of that, and like what it could do to families and what it can do to families and what it has done to families, and
it's very real.
The journey, yeah. And that's I was telling you, Ryan, when I was texting you a while back, that like part of like I do love the UFO phenomenon. I love all that stuff, and I love how like your family and your dad's experiences actually changed. Going back to the lady, I forgot to finish that thought. In that, like I grew up Catholic, and I never understood why Catholics venerate Mary so much. It never made sense to me because every other religion is like, no, you got your one God and that's it. You don't do anything else. And it makes sense to me now. Is like as I'm reading this stuff, learning about your family, learning about the lady, I'm like, oh. The Vatican knows this, and they're like, all right, like the lady is important, and she's telling us to worship her, or not worship her. She's telling us to like talk to her, and she's interfacing with people. Let's just write this shit into our story. That's the Virgin Mary now, and so like that way, like we'll still like we'll clout chase and say she's ours, you know, and at the same time like redirect like prayers to the lady, but she's on our team, and it's like
they talk about that in Department of Truth.
That's brilliant.
Crazy.
Actually, that's a very brilliant way to word that.
Yeah, like if she's on our team, then we've got the power. We got like, and again, right? Like, let's say,
See, we've been talking about her the whole time.
yeah. And
They say that in the book, bro.
if
Wow.
she says like,
I need to read this shit.
love and prayer are strong, prayer is real, the power of prayer is real, and if the Catholic Church knows that and they're hearing the lady say that, they're like, yeah, prayer is real, so give all your prayers to the Catholic Church and make sure you pray for all. And they're creating just this like group of people then that they can control this group thought and these prayers and intentions. And it's like, if we can get them all to pray for the same thing, we'll push our agenda and all that. So the thing is, what I have loved now is, like, I have two favorite cryptids. Okay, my two favorite cryptids are Bigfoot and the Virgin Mary, and I say that with the utmost respect, because the reason I say cryptids is because, like, in my opinion, a cryptid is not really what it is. A cryptid is like our perception or our like definition of what someone is experiencing. So like Bigfoot, like whatever Bigfoot is, we say it's Bigfoot. It's a big hairy guy in the woods. Whatever people like the Virgin Mary, it's not a Virgin Mary. It's what people perceive her to be. It's actually possibly this divine feminine being that has been interfacing with humanity since before the Egyptians, who call her Hathor, and these. What's wild, bro? Oh my god, dude! Like, if you go and Google the miracle of Fatima, it's orbs. It's orbs dancing.
That's the real redacted story. Yeah,
It's orbs dancing in the sky. It's 70,000 people. 70,000 people in fucking Fatima came, and 70,000 fucking people. It's in the newspapers, and this was like what, 1912 or something. I think
it's a canonized Vatican miracle.
It's like
it's accepted as absolutely true and real.
70,000 people. They describe it as they thought it was the sun dancing.
Well,
orbs.
that's how they altered the story, is what was explained to me by these people. They put out that it was an illusion from the sun, but that's the real story. Is there was the phenomenon was present.
Orbs and these three little kids were told by the, and what I love too, oh my god, I love how it's like, oh, the Virgin Mary told them to pray to her. The Virgin Mary, if you look at the documentation and if you look at what the children and all these people have said, at no point does the lady say, I'm the Virgin Mary. At no point does she say that. The children and everyone who has experience has said it was a woman in a shimmering, dazzling coat of light. It was a woman in a dazzling coat of like diamonds or light or whatever. And variations, obviously, of what she might physically look like. Like your dad said she was blonde and she had like, he said it was like diamonds on her. What did he say? Like diamonds?
Well, he just said her, he didn't say diamonds. It's just her
like dazzling.
Twinkled like the night sky.
Right.
Yeah.
And
how Hathor's depicted as well.
And the children of Fatima said the same thing. She was a woman who was glowing like bright and oh my god, dude. So it's so as a grown man, having been like forced to believe in the Virgin Mary all my life, never knowing what it was, and now I'm like learning about your dad, learning about all this other stuff. I'm like, wait, the Virgin Mary is real? But they were.
But she comes in UFOs.
Yeah. But the Catholic Church is just clout chasing, so they're like, saying it's her. Like
those clout goblins, man.
Yeah. So it's funny because like I was just at the in LA, in downtown LA. There's they call it Olvera. There's Olvera Street, and it's a very old school traditional community where it's a stretch of like little it's like a market, outdoor market, and there's restaurants. And like I'm like, I'm gonna get a Virgin Mary prayer card because I know she's the fucking lady, dude. I know who she really is. So I went down there and I got a little Virgin Mary praying card. I got two of them, and one of them, oh damn, I think it's in my wallet. One of them is legit like the way your dad described it: blonde hair, blue eyes, coat, and all that. And it's like she has different variations that people have said she looks like. And the one that I saw is like legit. Boom, that's your dad's description. So
that's insane.
Yeah, dude.
You want to see a relic real quick?
Please.
Totally off topic, but so the night that Dad's documentary aired, my dad has two sisters, and one of them, he has an older sister who, for as long as I can remember, since I was a very young child, she has been in the like clothing business. I don't know the technical career term here, but she like prints merchandise. You know, like a company might hit her up to print company polos or promotional gear. You know. Anyway, so when Dad's documentary came out, she had made a bunch of family, like private shirts, you know, the Fayetteville incident, and they just had, it was just like these dinky, really cheap lime green shirts with like these big old stock UFO photos on them. Then it said the Fayetteville incident. And we threw a party at my dad's other sister's house, and they had gotten kind of like these gag gifts that these little green aliens. Oh my
It was
God,
a
our
watch
brothers.
party, right, for the
Yeah,
documentary.
it was a watch
That's
party
awesome.
for the documentary. And my mom just gave me this the other night. I have not seen this, and I cannot tell you how many years. Look, this little green alien man.
A little green booger man.
Ah, no
We had these.
way.
Yeah, we were having little trinkets like this at the watch party. This is
Oh
a
my
relic
god.
of that night. And
She just found that and gave it to you.
yep, ran it because she did a
That's
yard sale the
sick.
other day, and she's been digging
Yeah.
deep in our
That's so
storage.
funny, dude.
And
You-
so I have this in the studio now.
That's I was telling you, man, like I still love, you know, the lore and whatever, you know, people are saying, but your family's story really did cure me from giving a shit about like nuts and bolts craft and little green boogermen inside of them and all that. Because and I think Semivan did it. Semivan was saying, shout out to Jim Semivan, who actually is like speaking very highly of your family still. Jim Semivan said in like an interview recently where like people who focus in on like the flying saucers and the occupants of the flying saucers, he's like, that's like living in a home all your life and you open a door and the doorway is to this completely other universe you've never seen before. You didn't even know was there the whole time. And there's like wallpaper on the other side, and you're like, oh my god, look at that wallpaper. Oh my god. It's like, dude, fuck the wallpaper. What's beyond the doorway? Like, look what's over there. Are you kidding me? You're focusing on the wallpaper?
And
like
that's
the wallpaper?
That's the
That's
frustrating
a really
part.
good
Man.
allegory.
That's the frustrating part is growing up and like, you know, I've been to probably a dozen conferences with my dad, meeting people in person. Back then, before the explosion of the internet, you know, documentaries coming out, and it's like, well, tell me about the craft. Tell me about the being. What did they look like? Were they 3 foot tall? Were they 4 foot tall? And like, that's great. There's nothing wrong with people wanting to know those details, but that's what I've been hounded by my whole life. And Junior and Dad, it's like, tell me about the craft. How many were there? What do they look like? Do you remember the shape? Do you remember the color? Do you remember the brightness, the intensity? How many? the blah 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 blah. They want to know every little detail about the being and the craft, and it's like,
None of that
what-
shit's important.
None of that even matters. There's a whole other reality outside of ours that is much higher than ours and vibrates at a frequency that we can't even perceive with our little monkey brains.
Yeah. You're like
And-
trying to,
You're right. That's exactly the truth of this shit. It's like, what about the implications of these interdimensional entities just showing up in a house full of 4 kids,
Yeah.
fucking that life up, and then grandma and grandpa are saying we're all crazy? You know, what about that? I want to talk about that.
Yeah.
Like, I want to talk
Fuck
about
that. What color were they? How big were they?
yeah. I want to talk about the real stuff. You know, but
It's going back to Grant Morrison, which like he says the same exact thing. Like he puts all these. Oh my God, still got to touch on that real quick. He puts all these little profound like little breadcrumbs into these stories that he writes, and then someone will be like at a convention, be like, Grant, how is it possible? Like, what kind of wheels does the Batmobile have? Like, how was it able to like drive or? And he's like, the
Got at least
fucking
4.
It's like the question was who puts the wheels on the Batmobile, and like he's like so mad because that's what they're focusing on. I was like, there is no fucking wheels. There's no fucking wheels, okay? Like it's stuff. What are you focusing on? And it's the exact same point. It's like these things that these people focus on. Real quick, back to Grant Morrison, bringing it all the way back. So Grant Morrison tells that story about the abduction or whatever you want to call it, and I forgot at the very end. He's like, okay, and then they're like, now you have to tell as many people as possible what we just told you. You have to inform as many people as possible about this. And he's
what
like,
they told my dad. You got to go tell your story to the whole world. You got to,
right?
Or it'll all be on your hands if anything bad happens.
And so he's like, okay, I'm a comic book writer, so the only thing I can do is like put it into comics. So he goes home and was already like trying to come up with this comic called The Invisibles. So then he just trickles everything in his experience into The Invisibles, and he writes, dude, chaos magic. Talk about this in sigils. He writes himself into the comic as one of the main characters, who's got a bald head just like him and all this stuff. And anyways, he trickles all the information into The Invisibles. He puts it all out there. The reality isn't real, not the way you think it is. There's a hidden agenda. There's people that are trying to control it. There's a group of individuals who have bad intentions. You have to break away from them, and you have to love, peace, prosperity, all that stuff, and think positively. And so he writes this comic book, and he puts it out. It does really well. It goes bonkers. And that was like mid to late '90s. And a couple years go by, whatever. And he's like, I hope people get this message. And a little movie comes out that really pulled a lot of that information from that comic book called The Matrix. And And a lot of people are like, oh, the Wachowskis wrote the Matrix, which is, yes, they did write like the script, and they did write like the main story, but it is very well known, if you Google it, the Wachowskis like borrowed heavily from Grant Morrison's The Invisibles. Like there's
that makes a lot of sense.
Right. There's shot for shot like panels from the comic that they redid in the movie. One of them being like when Morpheus is trying to get Neo to believe in himself and to jump from the building. Like that is literally from the comic book of The Invisibles. And no disrespect and not taken away from the Wachowskis, because what they did was kind of brilliant. Was they turned it into kind of like a whole thing about the nature of being and the nature of self and the nature of like your physical being and who you are. Like it's make believe, it's fake. You can like change that if you needed to, and if there's something else beneath you that is who you really are. And that's kind of like how they went into their story about how they turned it into a story about like their struggle with being trans and all that. Which is still very like that's their story that they added into it, and that's very real too. Yeah. But a lot of it is, and what's interesting is Grant Morrison does that shit too. Grant Morrison used to cross-dress in Glasgow, Scotland, when he was a young guy. He like had these issues. Like he there was always something that he knew about himself that was like, this seems fake. I can play with this. My image, my person.
Like a detachment from reality.
This is an avatar, and if this is an avatar and this is fake, I can mold it to how I want. And so he did that. And he would cross-dress, and he would dress as a woman, and he would present and like do that, and it's like he's one of the most fucking fascinating dudes. He did it. He just recently released a book called Lude, which is his kind of version of Merlin, but it's with like this magician woman who is like Merlin, who is trying to teach her things to the next generation. It's a book that just came out a couple weeks ago.
Is this another comic book, or is this
it's an actual book, a novel?
Oh,
yeah,
awesome.
It's called Lude. Yeah, it just came out. But anyways, like again, like kind of what your dad did was tasked with spreading this information and knowledge to as many people. Grant Morrison says, okay, that you're now tasked to do that. He writes this comic book. Shit is the fucking Matrix, which is like it revolutionized movies and storytelling in that format. And Grant Morrison is a practicing sigil magician, and in one of his comic books he writes out the protocol to what he does for sigil magic and how he manifests things into his life. And he's always kind of done this in his comics, and one of the things he talks about is he wrote himself into this comic book. People that he wanted to see, people that he wanted to meet, he would write that into the comic book, and eventually it would happen to him. He wrote, and he was not meaning to do this like on purpose, but he writes himself into the comic book because he just wants himself in the comic, and he's trying to figure out like how to kind of do this like story about this one of the characters. And I think one of the characters like gets like shot in the face or something. The character that's based on him gets like shot in the face, and he's like dying, right, in one of the issues. A couple months later, Grant Morrison gets a fucking staph infection in his face and almost dies and goes to the hospital. So then he's like, okay, now I have to write how I survive. And then he like writes that, and eventually the staph infection clears up. But Grant Morrison argues sigil sigil magic and the ability to manifest is 100% real, and he'll tell you this, like it's real. It happens. I can't explain how. I'm not an expert on why. I just use it. It happens to me. You have to be careful with it. It's very powerful, but it is something that I practice.
I've studied that quite a bit. I'm very fascinated with sigil magic and chaos magic. I've never like traditionally practiced this. I just enjoy reading theories and understanding things. My brain just, whereas my dad like builds airplanes and motorcycles and things out in his shed all day, my brain is always wanting to pick apart these philosophies and just really soak them in, and like the way I understand sigil magic or chaos magic in general is this reality is just this really malleable kind of like flubbering fucking morphing just swarm of overlapping frequencies of consciousness that can change as we begin to tune into these specific channels. You know what I mean? It's not like these discrete separations of realms, but it's very continuous. It's very fine. Like the separation between my world and your world is like literally I don't know. Anyway, so these symbols that they charge this intent with or their will into are these two-dimensional representations of a force or an energy or a concept that truly exists in another realm that is not tangible, but we're seeing glimpses of its energy in this two-dimensional form. So we're projecting our thought and our will towards this form, which, this is a multiverse. So it's like quantum entanglement. Like you jiggle one little particle, it's going to affect the other piece of it. You know what I mean? Just like if I punch you in the face, that's going to damage your skull, but also it's going to lash into your emotional energy, and you're going to feel rage and want to cry out, and you know what I mean? Like it affects you in the emotional field as well. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like
yeah.
we're projecting our intent and our will towards this little two-dimensional piece of paper or symbol or whatever, and it's affecting the real thing in the other reality, the real force that it represents. The shit's real, why? And that's why these religious institutions and secret societies use these symbols over and over and over in variations of these symbols. And that's why when Nick's wife was making our logo, I said, I want it to be a triangle with a circle in the middle, and the circle is a UFO. Why?
Yeah.
It's the Philosopher's Stone. But,
I love it, dude.
But it's also, not only is it the Philosopher's Stone, like you can manifest reality or change reality with your thoughts, but also, totally off topic here, but it's the UFO merged with the pyramid. You're bridging the UFO phenomenon with the spiritual reality. That's the secret. That's the meaning. But anyway, yeah, so sigil magic is super cool. I totally believe it's very real, but it's only real if you do it the right way, which is not go and tell everyone, I'm charging a sigil. I'm charging a sigil. You know what I mean? Because it loses its power. It's like, but also, like, I don't think that is something that should be played with very carelessly.
Dude, I will never. Like, even though it's out there, interested. I mean, he puts it on his comic. I'm like, that's nice, that's cool, that's there. I'm not touching it.
Yeah.
Like, just like how someone asked me the other day, they're like, you're so into UFOs, you're so into like aliens. You ever want to meet one? I'm like, fuck no. Yeah. Like I'm chilling right now, dude. Like, yeah, what? Like, because it's interesting because. Shout out your sister Emily.
Shout out Emmy.
Shout out Emmy.
Her episode that she did where she's talking about she's sleeping and as she's sleeping she's having these visions of these beings like watching her sleep. I'm like, I'm straight, bro. I don't want to talk to any of those. Like the lady's cool. I'll talk to her, but fucking keep everybody else away from me. Like I'm all right. Like I'll read about your guys' encounters, but I'm okay now. But speaking of,
I find I relate to that in a big way. Like I often say this thing where I'm like, I'm an observer. I like to observe. I like to absorb, but for the most part, you can have the experience, and I can experience it through talking to you about it.
Like your brother Chris Jr. Like that's why that's why he always keeps that thing on him. Like I'm straight. Like I'm good. But going back to your point about like manifesting quantum entanglement and all that, I have to say, dude, driving, the reason I called you, and Nick, you were on the call, and your brother Jeremy was in the car. The reason I called you is because I was driving up to Vegas, and I'm like, I got 3 hours, I got some time to kill. I'm gonna listen to some Bledsoe, right? So I think I had like 2 episodes to listen to. I threw it on, and it's oh gosh, what's his name?
Is it guest?
Yeah, what was the second to last guest you guys had on?
Was it Vincent?
Vincent. So Vincent's episode comes on, and I had you had talked about him before, but I did not know who he was. I didn't know his work.
Right.
So first 2 minutes, he's talking like he's East Coast. He's so East Coast. Oh my God, he bagels, New York, this and that. I'm like, immediately, dude, I fucking love this guy, right? And he's talking, and the first 2 minutes, he's like, "Are you gonna pass me that fucking toke or what?" And talking to Nick, and so he was like, talking about this and that, and I'm like, this guy reminds me of my teacher. This guy reminds me of Michael Tucci, my teacher. And I started thinking about Michael Tucci.
I remember you telling me this now.
And I'm like, oh man, I used to love my teacher Michael Tucci. He was from New York. He was in the Broadway scene. He was an actor. And my teacher Michael Tucci was in the Broadway musical Grease, and he was also in the movie. He was in the movie Grease. He was one of the T-Birds. Love Michael Tucci. Shout out Mr. Tucci.
Shout out Mr. Tucci.
Shout out Mr. Tucci.
I'm listening.
You have a fine young student here.
Yeah.
I'm listening to this conversation with Vincent, and I'm like, this guy reminds me of Michael Tucci, my teacher. I love him. All of a sudden, Ryan goes, and before we go any further, we got to tell you, Vincent, he's from he's from New York. He's been in the Hollywood scene. He was on Broadway. He was in Grease, and he was in the movie. And I'm like, What the fuck? Like,
Yeah,
what?
he was in the movie Grease. Yeah,
And so, like, again, like,
that's weird.
quantum entanglement, like, holy shit, I'm listening to this podcast, reminded of this teacher. And then as I'm thinking of it, as I'm saying it, like, I'm telling you, dude, within seconds, you're like, by the way, Vincent was on Broadway. He was in Grease, and he was also
That's
in the movie.
ridiculous.
I wanted to say this earlier, but I just didn't want to like totally kill it. You had a really nice flow going earlier, so I had this thought saved. But you were saying that it's just so mind-boggling to you about how like the Department of Truth is, for one example, how it so like relates to our story, despite the fact that we've never met them or they've never. I mean, you met him and he apparently claimed he had no clue who we were as people or our story. And my take on that is that, you know, as we're getting closer to this singularity of consciousness where these deep mysteries are going to be revealed to the world, just like it was written about, it's called the apocalypse. The movies make it look like some end of the world doom and gloom, nuclear holocaust, but in reality, apocalypse just means the revealing of the mysteries. Anyway, so my take on that is that the higher entities, the higher beings that are responsible for running the show down to the minutia, they are the ones responsible for putting these thoughts into people's heads. You know, for example, like your life and my life had these, and Nick's life, and even Alex's life, and Jeremy's life, and Michael Tucci's life, and Vincent's life, and all of our lives are playing out in these silly ways that have these deep, meaningful synchronicities that are like connecting us, like this big ball, like we were destined to meet simply because of how similar we are as people, and the energy we have, and the interests we have, and it's like, you know, just following our daily tunnel of consciousness, or our daily reality of tunnel. It's like daily reality tunnel. We were destined to bump into each other. And my whole point is, I think it's the same with Department of Truth, how the guy's just like, oh, let's write this into the story. And it's literally like identical to my family. I think the beings up there are just making this shit happen, just flipping a switch. Today you're going to have this thought. You're going to write this. Today, this is going to be a good idea.
Downloads.
Oh, man, you're going to go see Batman when you're 3 years old, and you're going to be obsessed with it, and you're going to see this. And that's actually what Tim Taylor, which for those who don't know who that is, he's the guy that everyone worships as this mysterious billionaire playboy figure in American Cosmic. He's the guy, the dragon, so to speak, the Tyler Durden of the UFO world. But that's one of the things he told my dad, is that these entities are so hyper intelligent that they manipulate every fine little detail, every little moment in time in your life to steer you where you need to go, because they're these angels from a higher realm that can see all things outside of time and space. It's totally, completely irrelevant to them to even consider that time as an obstacle to them is ignorant and stupid. And every moment that you're going about your day and you have this brilliant download or this thought or this feeling, and you follow that, and it takes you to where you're like looking back on it, you're like, oh my God, I was meant to be here because I did this, and this. The beings guided you towards that.
Yeah.
No doubt about it, dog.
There, and it's like, okay, maybe you can make the argument about like, oh, it's just a coincidence. But dude, I'm telling you, look at that cover for that comic of the lady with the way your dad described, and this comic book, like, how, like, there's no way something didn't seep into someone's consciousness to like put this then on paper for a comic book. Like, it's wild, dude. Like, it's because I was at the convention. I asked the artist Tyler Boss. I'm like, and I wasn't trying to like trick him. I wasn't trying to catch him and say like, you took this from the Bledsoes. I really was interested to know, because I didn't know, is he getting it from you guys or what? So I was like, where did you get the imagery for this cover? And he goes, my wife is really into this stuff, and my wife helps guide me on like what kind of things to put in there, because he did the whole I think that might be issue 7, dude. That you were talking about, Nick. I think that's Tyler.
So crazy.
I think that's Tyler Boss's cover, or Tyler Boss's issue where he did the art on the interiors for that with the orbs and all that. And he says, my wife is really into this, and my wife helped me understand like what to put with the imagery and stuff. And that issue, he's got orbs that like appear on people's front doorsteps and like shows what's in the orbs and all that.
It has to be,
dude. It is issue 7,
right?
Are you shitting me? That's
the
one issue with the orbs, Ryan.
Wow. The one with the cover,
the one with
of
the UFO and the cow.
Yes, I just looked it up. Tyler Boss,
woman?
Department of Truth. It's literally, it's the red woman.
So that,
you know the significance of the red woman thing, the Scarlet Woman.
What do you mean?
Aleister Crowley writes a lot about that one. That was
they talk a lot about Crowley and Department of Truth.
The Scarlet Woman was what he was trying to manifest.
Yes.
You know, it's
Yep.
like, not to get too like totally deranged off topic here, but you know, everybody has known. Everybody who's anybody in the intelligence world, including secret societies and these completely mind-bogglingly rich and influential, you know, groups that broker the future of humanity since the times of Babylon. You know, they've always existed, these secret societies. They've always known that there are two aspects of creation. Well, technically three, counting us. You know, there's two, and there's the masculine and the feminine forces. They've always known this. They have always known this, and they've always tried to pervert this to the public so that we don't have the truth. We don't have the knowledge of how things really are, that, you know, that they really work. They want us stuck in a cave seeing the shadows on the wall from the sunlight from the outside, like, you know, Plato's allegory. Anyway, so Aleister Crowley particularly was fascinated with this inverted image of the divine feminine, and his attempt was to manifest the Scarlet Woman, which would be like if I believe correctly, it would have been the one to birth the Antichrist according to his doctrine.
Yeah, you're basically I mean, that's there's a whole panel in one of the issues that is a amazing like visual of that exact thing you just said, of that exact like thing that because him and Jack Parsons going out in the desert.
Yep, and and who did Jack Parsons meet? He actually, ironically, he met a redheaded woman named Marjorie Cameron, who he believed was the Scarlet Woman, and they like ran away together or some shit, and it's this crazy story. But yeah, the Red Woman is significant, and it's also known as Babylon, the horror, or the great mystery Babylon. It's in the Book of Revelation.
That's what they call her in the book. In
really?
Truth. They call her Babylon.
Yeah, that's biblical. And let me guess, it's Babylon without a Y, right?
It's a Babalon. Yeah,
that's Crowley shit, bro.
It is. They say, dude, I'm telling you, it's like of all the media, of all the whatever, Department of Truth does the best job that I've seen in connecting all the dots.
Right.
Like they connect all the dots. And dude, it's so funny because their archives in Department of Truth are like sticky notes on a wall with like string in between them. That's their archives. Like, and they go in there and they're like, don't touch anything, don't move anything.
The highest level, they're just dorks.
Right.
Literally.
And it's like
dorks.
That's what before we get to that, like, spoiler alert, when you guys come on to our show, what I want to do is put up these images and like everything you're talking about right now, Ryan, like we'll show you the comic art and it looks so fucking badass, by the way. But when it's like that exactly what you just said, I want to overlay over the image. There's a cold page. The entire page is that story in comic book form, like almost as if you're describing it perfectly. It's got Jack Parsons. It's got Aleister Crowley. It's got the Scarlet Woman, the reverse of the Divine Feminine. It's got them out in the desert. It's got them blowing up rockets, trying to talk to demons and all that. It's shit, bro.
Like I was saying earlier, like this Tim Taylor fella, he was actually, that's one of the things he did at one point bring up to my dad, or he brought it up to Diana, who was the researcher who was bringing it up to my dad. But they talk a lot about Jack Parsons and the Babylon working in the desert, and that's a kind of like an open thing that they discuss in these inner circles, is the implications of that, the ritual implications of that, and as well as you know, here's one thing that they had told us is that they do rituals when they launch rockets, and they observe the solstices and the equinoxes. Mm-hmm. Some very old pagan shit. So, yeah, I mean, there's definitely something to that, and that's the thing that has driven me the most mad, the most insane, is like, I wish I could just literally tell every human person on the planet to just shake them and just like break them out of their little stupor. Like, bro, listen, you grew up where it was cool to be atheist. You grew up. You as in like second person to a person our age. You grew up where it was cool to be atheist. You grew up where it was cool to not like, you know, want to go to church or whatever. That's cool. But here's the reality. The people at the highest levels of this planet that are studying this shit, that are knocking on doors in these out little backwoods ass towns in the South, having these real crazy experiences with interdimensional beings, just behold, we're here to, you know, get the story out. Go tell everybody you know. And then the CIA showing up and shit. You know what they're telling us? That they're into the occult, and that they're into, you know, sacred geometry and Kundalini yoga and fucking remote viewing other planets with your mind and all this psychic crazy stuff. So it's like, that's one of the things that kills me to my core. At this point, like seeing people just walk around in their blatant stupor, whether it's atheism, whether it's, being like really hardcore into certain other religions. It's like, I shouldn't feel this way, but it almost makes me, it's frustrating. It's so frustrating. It's frustrating, especially atheism. That shit pisses me off because it's lazy. It's like fear. It's like you're programmed to not seek farther and farther levels of knowledge. It's like you're programmed. I don't know.
It's hard to blame. It's really hard to blame people on an individual level. Like I fully understand what you're saying, but like, everybody's on their own journey. Everybody's lives are so different. So,
and I'm speaking from a place of pain right now when I say that, because of the attacks on me, and that's why I'm frustrated. I'm trying to overcome that. It's not the right mindset to have, but I'm being honest with you and telling you I do feel that way, and it's like, anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I believe like those people that you're talking about would really, benefit and enrich their lives from. I feel like you got to believe in something. You know what I mean? You got to believe in something.
If
more.
not only because it's the truth that there is something, and it's like people live their entire fucking lives in a lie. They live their entire lives in a lie. I don't believe in nothing. Well, you know what? You're coming back. You're going to come back again and again and again and a fucking again until you figure it out. It's like, anyway, sorry. That's my.
No, I empathize greatly with that, specifically, Ryan. Like, I'll tell you a real quick story of when I was first getting into your family story, when I was like specifically getting into, after reading Hermetic philosophy. Like, it's, by the way, if you haven't read that, it's 125 pages. Get it on Amazon. Get it at Barnes & Noble. It's you can read it in a weekend.
This book is called Hermetic Philosophy?
What is it called? Is it Hermetic Philosophy by the Three Initiates?
The one by the Three Initiates is the Kybalion. Are we talking about the same thing here?
The Kybalion, yeah. It's the Kybalion.
Yeah,
Don't you ever call yourself an idiot.
Yeah, dude, you're dope.
My apologies.
That's the one book. I get DMs all the time. Do you recommend any books for me? That is the only book I can in good conscience recommend.
Here's a quick little aside. It's called the Kybalion, the Hermetic Philosophy. So you weren't.
So I was halfway there.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate the affirmation. So the thing is, like, after I read that, cracked my brain open. And that reading changed me because
truth, bro.
It made me, dude. And if you practice any form of like, I'll take this back. If you've ever been forced by your family to believe or practice any religion, this makes that make sense. And it's like, oh, this is what they've been trying to tell me the whole time, but they were trying to force it. And if they would have just fucking shown me this, it would have made way more sense. This is way more simplified. I know where it comes from now. And I was having that same exact issue where I'm reading this. I'm becoming your friend that you had on the podcast. My family thinks I'm crazy. And it's the point of his podcast.
Shout out Mark.
Yeah. You're having this awakening, this understanding of like, I want to know so much more about this. I want to grow now. I want to like I'm spiritual now. In a way, you're learning about way more important things. The reality, like the nature of reality, the meaning of life, like, and you're wanting to learn, right? Your friends don't care. Your family doesn't care.
They don't care.
Your boss doesn't care.
No one
Everyone
really
else, they're living their life. They're happy to just do the day to day. And you're looking around and you're like, what the fuck is going on?
Like zombies.
I was getting angry. I was getting angry with my family. I was getting angry with my friends. I was feeling isolated, right? And I'll never forget it. It was probably like a year ago, maybe a little bit more. I'm in downtown Claremont. If anyone knows the area, it's beautiful. And I was at this like coffee shop, and I was with my parents, and like I'm like just fucking over it. I'm like, God, and I'm like, I'm just doing the thing. I'm playing the game, and I'm like, whatever, And I see this guy and his girlfriend. The guy's covered in tattoos from like neck all the way to toe. His girlfriend's wearing this super sick sweater that was like tattoo flash art on it, and the imagery on it was like this little cherub kid with like a crown of thorns. It was like mushrooms. It was like triangles. It was, I forget, like orbs. I forget whatever else it was. There was all this imagery, and I'm like, I know exactly what that is. So I'm like, these guys know what's up. So I walked up to him, and I'm like, hey, what's up, guys? Hope you're having a good morning. I just wanted to say, I love your sweater. I'm tapped into everything that's going on right there. And they turned to me, and the guy's like, my brother, dude, what's going on? He's like, hell yeah. He's like, and he goes, how have you been? How have you been getting into this stuff? And I'm like, I just read a book and I loved it. He goes, what book did you read? I'm like, the Kybalion, and he fucking gave me a hug. He like dabs me up.
Hey.
He's like, that's what's up, man. And he's like, how are you liking it? Like, are you learning? Are you growing? And I'm like, dude, I am. And I'm like, this is a stranger on the street, guys. And
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm so frustrated that I feel like nobody else cares. Like, I'm learning all these things. Like, I feel like I've just learned how to read a new language. I'm seeing your sweater.
Mm.
And I know what it means. And it's
Yeah.
like reading a new language. And I'm so enthralled and I want to know more. And I'm angry and frustrated that my parents, that my family, that my friends don't want anything to do with it. And the guy goes, and that's okay, man. Just love them. Just love them.
Ooh.
And I was like, fuck. And he goes,
Ooh.
take all of that and turn it into love. He's like, be the example of when they need to come to someone, they'll know that you're compassionate, you're open, you're sincere, you're loving, and they'll come to you and they'll ask, and that's when you tell them. You don't tell them now, you don't force it, you let them come at your own time, and that's how. And dude, it like cured me. It cured me.
Wow.
The stranger on the street who like just by chance I saw his girlfriend wearing a sweater. I walked up to him, and
Yeah.
he fucking changed me. And I'm like, that's it. That's all it is. And so ever since then, like, and again, the thing that like that Vincent like made me really think about on that episode. Anybody who hasn't listened to it, please go listen to that episode. It's amazing. One of the big things that like I really that resonated with me is that he talks about how he was the class clown growing up as a kid, and he's like his insecurity. People will like me if I make them laugh, right? That's
Mm.
me. People will like me if I make them laugh. If I can just make them laugh, they'll like me. And his thing was, as an immature, stupid kid, he's making jokes about everything, including making fun of people to make them the butt of the joke, to
Right.
make everyone laugh. And he doesn't realize he's hurting and he's pushing people away. As you grow up and mature, you realize, holy shit, dude, like that's my insecurity projecting out. I need to change that. I need to be the self-deprecating butt of the joke. Everyone's gonna laugh at that, and I'm fine with it.
Yeah.
And
And
that's
also, nobody really make fun of you.
right. So that's what I've tried to do now. Like I've tried to just like put everyone at ease, put everyone at peace. Like I'm a big guy, and all my life people have always thought like I'm a whatever. I'm a big guy, and like I look scary. I got a bald head, and everyone's always kind of been
And you
like,
like metal. "Rah."
yeah, yeah, like everyone's always been timid around me, and so I've always had to work to like put them at ease. And so
Uh-huh.
this is just the next step is to like, no, like I'm not, I'm just here to have a good time. I'm here to make you feel comfortable. Like, just be loving, be open, be like empathetic, and I tie that to your family because I was telling you this a while back, and it was like, yeah, like the story that your dad was given to share is really important, of course, but more so than anything, it's like what I feel is like, damn, they chose your family because your family is an example for so many people of love and acceptance that a lot of people didn't grow up with. Like I have a really bad relationship with my dad, right? You have a great
Oh,
relationship with
sorry.
your dad.
Yeah.
No,
I'm sorry
it
to
is
hear
what it
that,
is.
man.
But like, so I have a hard time understanding, like, okay, how do I be a good father? How do I be a good friend? I don't know how to be like, I only have like this weird example of a man that pushes me away from other men. I don't know how to deal with it. I see the way you interact with your dad. I see the way your dad interacts with like your brothers. I'm like, holy fuck, that's how you do it. And that's kind of been like for me, like just as much as how fun, like this, all this other shit, the UFO phenomenon and all that. That's great.
The crazy stuff.
But
Yeah.
yeah, that's great. But like what has helped me a lot is like seeing how you guys interact as a family. And to
Wow.
me that's like, damn, that's how I want my family to interact. I want them to be loving and supportive and feel like no matter what you believe or what happens to you, like we're here. And it's
That's
just
deep,
like,
Tom. I'm
yeah, dude.
like very humbled.
That is such a beautiful story. That interaction that you had with those people, that's so beautiful and like that was destined to happen. And I feel like I resonate so much with everything you're saying right now, Tom. Like, yeah, this stuff is truly incredible and amazing. This entire phenomenon that we're talking about. But yeah, I found through like my personal life experience that it's just even more miraculous and amazing than all of this phenomenon is like the core of the story is just spread love, love everybody around you, and they
Shine
will
a
come
light.
to you. Yeah, shine a light. They'll come to you when they need you. Like I've had that experience with my family where, you know, my family is all very Christian. They always have been. I was raised as a Christian. And you know, it's funny because it's like, as the quote unquote black sheep of the family, the one who doesn't like follow the religion or whatever, the initial, I guess, knee jerk reaction of the family is to be like, oh, this person is like a heathen, or this person doesn't, you know, they're unholy, they can't be a good person, and all of that garbage. And I just decided, like, I'm just gonna love everybody in my family so hard that they just have no option but to come to me and ask, like, all right, so what are you doing that's working for you? Because like, it seems, and at this point in my life, like, I'm the person that my entire family comes to. My mom, my dad, my brother, my sister, everybody, they come to me.
I've witnessed this time and time again, man. And honestly, you know, if we're gonna talk about the elephant in the room here, not really an elephant in the room. You just know I like that phrase. Name the whole episode that. But anyway,
yeah.
if we're gonna talk about some growth here, like, ever since doing the podcast, I've really seen a change in your family as a whole. Like,
oh, thanks, man.
It seems, and you know, I live out of town and I don't get to see your parents and your siblings a whole lot. But every time I've seen them, it's like just the most positive, glowing, just like, they're so proud of you and what you're doing, and clearly, like, what you're speaking about resonates with them enough to be coming to their son for advice when they're down and out, which speaks a lot, I believe, about, you know, the dynamic of family. And, you know, he's not kidding. Like, I just saw his parents this past weekend, and the demeanor they had was so positive towards what they were doing. It meant a lot to me. Essentially, without going into too many details here, we did an on-site episode the other day that will come out in December. I'm not sure exactly when this current episode right now will air, but it'll air maybe like October, November. I don't know. Anyway, we filmed an on-site episode, and Nick's parents stopped by for 20, 30 minutes just to watch us set up, just to be in on the action, just to hang out, you know, because it was down the street. And that right there is like, you
That's
know,
awesome.
The love, the empathy, and all that, you know, like it really does. It really does.
Yeah,
spread.
I felt like as a kid, it was like there was kind of a dark cloud over the family, a little bit of a dark cloud. I think a lot of that came from like generational trauma, a lot of like religious trauma and oppression, and then like the dynamic between, you know, and people have hard lives, and we forget a lot of the times how hard our parents' lives were. And it's like a lot of that stuff gets passed to them, and they might just not be equipped to deal with it or whatever. So I never blame, you know, anybody for their past. It's not about your mistakes. It's about how you go about correcting those mistakes and becoming a better person. And I've seen that transform in my own family. So I didn't mean to make it a big old thing about me and my family, but I do really resonate with everything that you're talking about, Tom, with just like being an example of love, like a beacon of love. That's the core of the phenomenon.
Yeah.
Like if you boiled all of it down to just one little thing, it's love versus fear. It's light versus darkness. It's like, if you just love, then everything else will fall into place.
That's true.
And it's like, that's the testament of, I think, like, what I mean, yeah, like you said, like, deep down, after everything, at the end of the day, like, that's what your dad was asked to do, is to spread the message and to explain to people. And that's like, look at the community this show has created, right? Like, not just like with the listeners that you have, but the Discord that you have, like by the way, dude, I'm just so you know, I'm so fucking mad anytime I miss out on any of the events, because sometimes I work late nights, and so it's like, that's, you know, don't change it for me, but I'll work around it. But like the fucking movie nights and the voice chats, like that shit, like when you hop in and when you listen to people talking about it, you can tell this is the highlight of their week, because they've finally found other people that are into the same thing, that are not judgmental, that have had a difficult time trying to find it. Like, this is it. Like, here we go, guys. Here's where we all come together and congregate. And at the same time, you're just building like this community of.
And we genuinely love each other in there. Like,
yeah, dude.
Like it's like like we're really meeting real people that are really coming into this group. And like for example, you had mentioned earlier there's a yoga instructor in our group. Well, she just announced today that she's like 5 months pregnant and is celebrating. Her
Damn,
whole life is turning upside down. And
that's
she's like, I'm
rad.
so sorry I've been out of the group for so long, but I've been dealing with this, and was so excited. And I haven't even looked because I was working down up until basically Alex got here to set up for the show tonight. So I haven't really been in the group since, but I saw the boom, 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 boom blowing up. Congratulations, just sharing the love. And like people really in there, like be talking about relationship problems, be talking about, loved ones passing, and everyone just flocks to each other and spreads the love and the comfort.
I think it's
Right.
like you were saying earlier, Tom, how like people that are interested in the same things just gravitate towards each other and find
Yeah.
each other. It's like
Yeah.
you found those people in the street, like just wearing, and boom, that connection was made, and it was like you guys knew each other. It was like
Yeah.
you knew each other. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's the same thing with the community. It's just a bunch of people who found each other and are there to listen to each other and like support. It's beautiful. It's really moving and beautiful.
Yeah, we had no intention of that
Mm.
feature. It was just like
That was just the good in people's
that,
hearts.
that was
It just
yeah.
became
It's,
that.
it's just organic. It's completely. I mean, you can't control a couple hundred people and what they think and believe and say,
Yeah.
and it's just amazing how positive the community has been. And yeah, man, like I'm so happy that to have made friends like you. I mean, meeting you,
Yeah.
like we didn't know each other until you started hitting me up on Instagram, and I thought you were super cool, and I was like, oh, dope, this guy's into Batman. I love that.
Yeah.
He likes metal
Hell
music,
yeah.
and next thing you know, you're posting memes about Alex being the Joker, and like,
Dude, fucking Alex the Joker. God
Alex
damn.
the Crowley.
Yeah. By the
look,
way,
we got
all
Alex
the
this as a joke.
that's so
Yeah.
funny, dude. Yeah.
That's on his
yeah.
desk.
Yeah, that's the handsome Joker too, so that fits.
And it's
Yeah.
the John DiMaggio voice from the Under the Red Hood.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's got a little like it talks.
Yeah.
Oh shit. It does. Oh yeah, dude. That's hilarious.
It's sick. I love John
Can you hear it?
DiMaggio as the Joker,
Yeah, yeah.
by the way.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
me too.
Yeah, dude.
Damn, I don't want to keep you too much longer. I feel like we're rounding up to a good point. We definitely
Yeah,
gotta
yeah.
have you back on. Oh, you know what? I'm not gonna get all sad and sappy. We're about to come right on your show, and it's gonna
Right.
be
I
amazing.
can't wait.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, so hang
Yeah,
on.
so-
So when we close this, sorry, spoiler alert.
No, I was gonna say. So basically, we'll have you guys on the Bat Force because obviously people are listening. They know you guys on this. It's your podcast. But the way I kind of look at it is like, to be honest, like after a while, I'm like, oh, I have this podcast. We have this reach. Like, it's cool. We're like doing it kind of for personal reasons to like have fun and talk. We're using it as an excuse to have access to like comic artists and writers. And now, like straight up, dude, I'm just using it to fucking like blast your guys' name out there and like get more. I'm like straight up like this is called manifesting all this shit. Like get more people as much as possible onto the Bledsoe Said So mothership. Like that's what that episode's going to be. And we'll talk about Department of Truth and we'll show some cool art. And like the whole concept is like, hey Ryan, hey Nick, like look at this. Like where do you guys recognize this from? It's like, we fucking lived it. And so that's like the whole concept there because it's like it's wild, dude. Like the synchronicities from that comic to your life and what you guys have seen, like all the it's so funny. Like the story, Nick, that you're saying of sitting out and watching all the orbs, and you and your wife are just getting your mind blown. And Jeremy's like looking at chairs. It reminds me of the story you said, Ryan, of your mom, where like your dad's like grabbing you guys and pulling you outside. Look, and your mom's like, yeah, let me know when they're sitting on the front, like waving at us on the lawn, like
Yeah, she says it all the time. Like,
because you guys, it's so I think it's a Tuesday night,
yeah.
like
Oh man,
orbs.
mom had some crazy experiences lately. We did just cover it in an upcoming episode, so I'll
Dude.
save the time.
Shout out Jenny because I loved her story of when she was driving home and an orb was following her home.
Yep.
That's wild.
That was
dude.
her first experience.
And she was like getting like she was like trembling, getting emotional talking about it like on the episode.
Oh yeah, I mean it was a big catharsis. She was with me for 2 years at that point and hadn't had a single experience, but was around meeting all the Hollywood people and the government people, and we're out here seeing them and talking about it. And she's like, "What the heck? Like, am I not meant for this? Am I like not a part of the family? Am I going to phase out? Like all these terrible thoughts were going through her head." And then that was a really big night for her. And also the dynamic was different then. We didn't see orbs every night back then. It might have been on the weekend if there was a crowd here. And over time, the intensity picked up and increased and increased. I remember, this is going to sound crazy, but this is in my head how long it's been. I think the longest I had ever gone in these last going on 16 years of being in this spotlight for having these experiences and whatnot, the longest time I can recount in my mind being experience free of the paranormal was probably 2 consecutive months. And otherwise, throughout this span of time, it's always been something coming back to be like, hey, we're still here, keep going.
Wow.
And wave and flash, and it's crazy. So it's just insane to think that, you know, she and I were together for 2 years,
Right.
and
Right.
she didn't see anything. So yeah, it was very cathartic relief, and I'll tell her you said that. That's really
Yeah,
nice.
for sure.
People don't usually shout her out.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, because we're doing the show, but
Yeah.
she's right there.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah,
Yeah.
love you, dude. You're amazing. The vibe from you is literally just like the shiniest, just softest, warmest glow of the sun, without being like an infant or a baby in any humanly possible way. The energy from you reminds me of the sun from Teletubbies, like that face up there. It's just like beaming down on you, and it's just like this bright smile.
Wait.
And glow. Yeah, that's you, bro. You're
Look. Hell yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. You're
Hell
just
yeah,
you're
we
just
gotta
like this.
screenshot that.
Yeah, seriously. You're just always this really bright.
Make us a meme, Tom.
I'll
Yeah,
try.
make it yourself, bro.
Oh,
You're
can you
always
hear my
this-
dogs going
this-
crazy? Jesus.
Oh, I hear them. They're ready. That's a
They want
element
the
right
meme.
there.
Yeah.
They
So-
want the meme.
Bless you for being you. You're just truly just like the nicest guy, and you have really put in a lot of effort to gas me up and just be so kind to us and thoughtful to us, and the intensity with which you speak to us about the compassion and the love and the empathy really just does it for me, dude. And I really appreciate you as a person and you coming on our show. And I especially appreciate us coming on your show.
Oh yeah, man.
Because not only will it be fun, but that will potentially could be nothing, and that's okay, but potentially could be very huge for us with your reach and your exposure. And that's so kind of you to do that.
If we can get you just like 10 to 20 more people, I'll be happy. You just people that I think will, gravitate towards. The thing is like the comics, that stuff's cool, but the stuff you guys are talking about, that's real shit, So I think that a lot of people need more of that stuff, especially right now. Just spreading the love, like spreading this positivity. It's funny because like we'll rope them in with UFOs, and at the end it's like, "Psych, bitch! It's about love." You know what I mean?
That's our whole show. That's our entire show.
Yeah. Wow.
I love it.
That's amazing. Okay, well, hang
Yeah.
on the line. We're gonna hit them with the how we end our show. We're gonna hit them with that. Stay on, and then we'll talk real quick about scheduling. And other than that, anything anybody did not get to say or want to say or anything like that?
Thank you guys, man. I just wanted to say, like, this is
Thank
wild
you.
going from following you guys' story, following the podcast, being in the Discord. Just like this is really, really bizarre to me. That like it's kind of crazy, like being on the podcast after following you guys for so long and getting to know the story and from behind the scenes. Like, yeah, man, I got nothing but love for you, Nick, for Alex, Jenny, all you. Like
He
the
hears
whole
you, by the way.
family. Good, I'm glad.
Alex
The
is cheering like this.
That handsome son of a bitch. But
Big belly laugh.
yeah, but no, thank you guys for having me on, man. This was honestly, this is crazy. Like I can't believe that we manifested this.
Yeah, and I assure
Thank
you,
you,
just
man.
to say, like it's equally mutual for me. From meeting somebody saying, "I've read about your story. I've read about your family." For me, it's like, "Oh my God, you're on my show." You know what I mean? So like,
Yeah.
it's mutual. It's mutual. We could go on and on about that. You're
Right.
amazing, dude. Let's hit him with the bye, guys. Please, by the way, plug your show.
Oh,
I'm still
if you guys,
unprofessional. I forgot. Plug your
if you
show.
guys are into comic books, Batman specifically, DC, there's a lot of stuff going on with DC right now. Kind of like mirroring the UFO thing. A lot of infighting over there, but yeah, check us out at Bat Force Radio. We're on Spotify, SoundCloud, iTunes. Check us out on Instagram, at the Bat Force. Give us a follow, and I'm at Bat Force Tom on Instagram as well. So yeah, if you guys are into any of that stuff, if you want to talk about. We didn't even get into Sasquatch and Bigfoot in your dad's dream. Damn. But any of that kind of stuff.
Well, we'll do it on
yeah,
your
yeah.
show, bro.
Oh, yes,
They already
we
know
will.
it on our show.
Yeah.
Yes,
They know
we
it on
will.
our
That's
show.
true. Yeah.
Yeah. Listen,
So
I'll be an
anyways.
open book too. Trust me.
I'm glad. Yeah, for sure.
All right.
And
But yeah,
seriously, he knows what he is talking about. Nobody knows and talks about comics in the way that Tom does. Check it out. You won't regret it. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's very high
appreciate it,
level.
guys.
High
Of
level. High
Yeah.
level. All right,
All right,
Tom,
let's
love
do
you.
it.
On 3, we hit him with the BG. You know the drill. All right. 1, 2, 3. Bye, guys.
guys.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for watching. If you want to see more, check out our other videos.
And before you go, don't forget to subscribe. See you next week. Peace.